Hi, everyone. Madeline from Dribble here. How's it going? Thank you so much for your patience. Hello, Ali. Thank you, thank you. We had a few technical issues on the back end, but we're here now and we're so excited for this Spark AR workshop. Thank you so much for bearing with us in this new technological age of digital and online workshops. Hi, Walter. I'd love to hear whereabouts in the world you're joining from and what time is it there? Is it like crazy midnight for some people? If so, thank you so much for hopping on in your evening time, 9 a.m. Great. Awesome. 1 p.m. California. I love that we have such an international bunch here. Massachusetts, Czech Republic. Amazing. Well, welcome. We've got someone else from Toronto here, Argentina. Amazing. Thank you so much for joining. It's awesome that you are here to learn all about Spark AR, its uses, and how to publish your awesome effects. This workshop's going to be super interactive. You're going to be creating something really cool in the workshop, and you're going to be able to publish your effects after. So can't wait to get stuck in. Thank you for joining. We're so glad to have you here with us today for our Spark AR workshop. It's called REMIX Reality, and we couldn't have booked better people to teach us all about Spark AR and how to use it than our buddies Leanne Toki, Isabel Udo, and Thomas Pietravallo. You're in for an awesome few hours of learning and designing Spark AR alongside some of the best in the industry. You're going to create something really cool and you're going to publish your effects at the end. So make sure that you have everything downloaded, all the assets downloaded so you could design along. Thomas is going to be dropping the assets and what you need in the chat. So make sure you have that downloaded. We're going to be kicking off momentarily, but first I've got to give you some housekeeping bits for you to have the best experience with us here today. So first, use the chat to get to know each other. Do some networking, share your profiles, share your effects. We want to hear from you. This session's going to be super interactive, so keep that chat really engaged. If you've got any questions, drop them in the Q&A tab. There's an ability to upvote other people's questions. So if you see a question that you like, then click the plus and that upvotes it. The more votes a question has, the more likely it will get answered. I saw someone ask, is this session being recorded? It is. It's going to be on our Dribble YouTube channel, so you could rewatch it. So this session is going to comprise of a panel discussion, some Q&A, and then a live hands-on demo and workshop. If you find yourself getting a bit lost or left behind in the workshop, don't worry at all. There's so much to learn here. We're going to open an additional room called the lounge, and our AR expert, Thomas, is going to be in the lounge. So just pop in there if you've got any questions or you need to get caught up, or if you feel like you're lagging behind. That's what Thomas is there for. The session is going to be super interactive, like I said. There will be an option for you guys to come up onto stage and interact with Leanne and show her your design, show her your work. If you want to do that, and when called to do so, raise your hand in the Q&A tab. So there's an emoji and it says hand raise. If you press that, that means that you want to come up onto stage and you want to share your work. We love seeing your work. So when you're called to do so, please do that and come up onto stage. If you run into any tech issues at all, we know we did this morning, but if you run into any tech issues, then just flag us in the chat or you could DM us. And then if you're sharing this on social media, we really encourage you to share it. We really encourage you to share the things that you have created during this course. You could tag us at Dribble and then tag Spark AR creators on Instagram, and then we reshare and repost everything that you guys share. So we can't wait to see your experience in this session and what you create at the end. And I've got my wonderful friend and colleague here with me today, Renee.
Hey, I'll be in the chat. I hope you enjoy the session. DM me if you need anything.
Thank you, Renee. We're going to be here with you all morning. And then special thanks to our event platform partners. Welcome. Okay, without further ado, I would first love to introduce you to Thomas Pietravallo. He is going to be in the lounge during the live demo in the workshop, and you could pop in and ask him any questions that you want if you feel like you need a bit of a deeper dive. So Thomas is a self-taught AR developer from Argentina, and with almost 2 years experience developing in AR Studio. After starting from scratch, he's now become one of the most active members in the community, and he's worked with some of the top studios and creators in the space. So you're in really good hands with him. Next, I'd love to introduce Isabel Udo and Leanne Toki. They're going to be doing a panel discussion, and then Leanne is going to be running you through the live hands-on workshop. So Leanne is the Spark AR program manager at Facebook and a digital media artist specializing in creating effects for the Instagram camera. Her background is in fine art from the University of Toronto, and she has extensive experience working as a graphic designer for Fortune 500 companies. Leanne is an artist and creator whose 2D work in illustration and design has been successfully translated into immersive AR. As a passionate advocate of the current opportunities in the space, she's made it her mission to show creatives how they could easily use the tool readily available to them to build AR, a lot like you guys are going to be doing today. So you are in awesome hands. And then finally, we've got the amazing Isabel Udo, who is an AR artist from the Netherlands. She's a founder and a creative director of Video Orbit, an interactive design studio based in Amsterdam, and she is most widely known for her innovative use of organic materials and vibrant colors and emotive sounds that she uses when creating her immersive AR. So you guys are in excellent hands. You're here with 3 AR experts, and we can't wait to get get the show on the road. So without further ado, welcome Leanne and Isabel.
Hi.
Hello, 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 hello. Thank you all so, so much for your patience and for being here with us today. We are so excited. I know I'm speaking on behalf of Isabel. We took a fair amount of time preparing this talk for you. We really appreciate that you've taken time. We know lives are busy, but we hope that we're going to be bringing a little bit of hopefully useful information, a little bit of inspiration for you if you are an existing creator, if you're an artist, digital, whatever your background. We hope that there's something that you're going to take from this talk today that will help you to kind of accelerate your growth, whatever direction you're going. We're hoping it's in AR, but what we'd love to do to begin is to kind of just build on the intros that were given to us, to you about us. And I think I'll go first, is you just kind of to continue on with what we were saying previously. I have a background in illustration and design, and I'd like to tell a little bit about how I fell into AR. There was an open call for creators to develop for Instagram platform, and that was when AR was just starting to grow on the platform. And I know I dove right in, and there was a wonderful community of people, just like myself and Isabel, that were really interested in learning how to build AR, but there are very few resources. So we did spend a lot of time communicating with one another. That is how I met Isabel. I'm going to hand it over to her and let her tell you a little bit about how she got to building with Facebook for Instagram and for the Facebook camera. Izzy, over to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Isabel Udo, and I'm an AR artist based in Amsterdam. And so, wait, I have some slides. Let me check. So I'm the founder and creative director of VideoBit Studio, and we are a creative AR studio where we mostly create very complex effects with lots of organic movement. I really love to, I get really inspired by nature, and yeah, that's what we do.
I love your work, Izzy. It's so vibrant and colorful. I bring a lot of color and energy to my work as well. I think there's a lot of kinship between us, and maybe what we can do is just talk a little bit about, as you moved into AR. I mean, you come to this with this experience of motion design as your background. Were there some elements that you felt that maybe you were missing, that you didn't, like the skill set that you didn't have yet, that you were looking for when you got to start building in AR? Was there something that that you had to teach yourself or learn more about?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I did two studies. One was in interactive design, which I actually graduated in 2014, and augmented reality was not really a thing back then. So I continued to study in film, and when I graduated, I did have some, some knowledge about coding. However, I didn't know anything about 3D modeling. So this was definitely something that I needed to really learn, and I kind of did that along the way because I really, I just wanted to make specific things. So I tried to do it along the way. And yeah, what about you?
So one of the skill sets for sure that I needed to learn when I was transitioning from being a 2D artist to an AR, a mixed reality artist, was the way that I was coming up with concepts. So I think building for screens, building and producing work that's graphic design that are for flat surfaces that are not interactive, I had to really change the way that I was coming up with concepts. And so not only was I now thinking about, okay, well, how's it going to look on a single plane? How is it now going to look when I myself, as a user, am going to be living in that experience, or someone else? How can I leave a little bit of this story for someone else to continue on what I've created? And also, technically, when I was building new projects, I would be really mindful that anything that I was building in 2D, I would actually break out into layers, more layers than say I had been doing previously, because that then would give me the opportunity to say, okay, here I'm bringing this into AR space, and I'm actually going to be able to start moving it, break those layers apart, see if I can give them depth. And that was something that was actually super exciting for me when I started creating for AR, because it's like, here I am reinventing the 2D method that I had already been so used to doing. And now there's this whole new take on something that I was doing. It was super exciting for me. And that's where, it just kind of kept me going and trying to figure out new ways of presenting that information. So, and I wanted to ask you if there were some capabilities, I guess, in AR that you are really excited about.
Well, there's so much, so many possibilities. But what really, really struck me when I really started to create AR and I started seeing other people using the effects, that was really the moment which was really magical to me, because there were actually people. I have a slide to show. So there were actually people who were using the effect in very, very different ways than I thought, or than I expected, and that was just really cool to see. So here on the right side, you see the effect, a video of me using the effect, but then on the left side, you see many different people using it from all over the world, and this was so inspiring and motivating. It was just really cool to see that so many people enjoyed the things that you created. I think that's just really cool.
Yeah, totally. And that's the thing too, is you kind of peer into their lives and their world, right? I don't know if you found that too in the beginning. We used to be able to, we were tagged a lot in stories and things. I remember people from Brazil and from, over in Europe. I'm in Canada. So it was very unusual to kind of see the world through their eyes. And then on top of that, the fact that they were using my art was just crazy exciting. I think you probably sense that too. And there's just so many people that are engaging in so many different ways. It's very exciting, and it
Yeah,
motivates us, I think, too, right, to do more. So yeah,
yeah,
um,
absolutely.
yeah,
And what
and
about you? What kind of capabilities are you excited about?
I think the ones that I'm most looking forward to have to do not so much with the face filters. I think we've done a lot with the selfie facing cam, but I'm really excited about the target tracking. So target tracking, in that if you take your camera and you actually activate a trigger, and then that builds a whole new experience. And I can see that we're going to be, I mean, we already have this capability. In Instagram, we can actually do multiple targets. So we can have multiple targets built into one effect. So, for example, something that I'm working on the side is a book. And that is something that's going to be really exciting, as I'm going to be, as the user is going to be flipping through that book, they're going to be able to hold their phone over target and not only just tell the story that's in that two-dimensional page, but there's a whole new element that will come to life. And because we have the capacity to do multiple targets, there will be several pages of that book that will then be able to tell an additional story on top of the visuals that are currently on the pages. So that for me is super exciting, just because I've always wanted to author a book and illustrate one. So that's my goal. 2022, I just put it out there. So that's a whole ton of pressure on myself. You can all hold me to it. Check in with me in like half a year and say, hey, you said you were writing a book. What's going on with that? So yeah, call me out.
I will definitely do that.
Thank you. Um, so, can I ask you, as we're talking about some of the steps that we took as new creators, what advice would you give to new creators? Like, especially a lot of the people that are here joining us today, I'm sure, and maybe we can actually drop a poll in if that's cool. Maybe we can see how many of those of you in the audience actually have some experience with Spark AI. I'd love to know that. And advice for those folks, Izzy, what would you recommend to new creators as they're starting this journey?
Yeah, so when I started creating AR, it was quite the steep learning curve, because it was definitely, it's completely different from any other, software. It's very multidisciplinary. However, what really, really helped me was to have one very specific concept, to create a concept and to really try to create that concept in AR how you envision it, because that really divides your process into smaller steps that are more feasible, basically. So instead of saying like, hey, how can I make this super complex thing, maybe you can start saying like, hey, how do I maybe make a circle rotate in AR. and then all of a sudden it becomes a lot more easy to understand and to go through the steps.
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. And it also gives you, I think, the confidence too. So once you kind of bite off that tiny little thing and you're like, wow, I didn't think I could do that, but hey, look, I did. Suddenly now you have confidence to say, let's replicate what I just did there and do it again with maybe a bigger problem. And I think that that's as well how I learned, I think any project that I would start would certainly begin with something that was a problem that needed solving. And then this is actually a really great lead in for one of the things that I would offer to new creators is to certainly leverage the community, because when you're going to explore these new ways of expressing yourself and you kind of have the vision in your mind but you don't know how to accomplish it in this very new industry, there's not a ton of documentation, right? So I think, speaking about the community, not being afraid to ask questions, because we're all kind of in this together. We're all new at it. Some of us, sure, we have a bit more experience, but really it's such a young industry that there really aren't any silly questions. And I think that's what I found so welcoming about this AR community, especially the Spark AR community, in that there were so many people that were so willing to share their knowledge. And then once those of us that had kind of learned that information, we were then willing to give back. And it was just wonderful and continues to be an excellent cycle where as a community, we're actually growing together because we're sharing this wealth of information. It's incredibly valuable. And that's the advice that I would give to new creators as they're entering, is to ask questions, be part of the communities, and don't be afraid to share back what you've learned as well. So yeah, those are my thoughts. How about our next topic, which I think is probably about what is most exciting for the future of AR? I mean, there's so many possibilities, but what for you do you find to be super exciting, Izzy?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is absolutely, the wearables. I think the wearables, we're gonna change from not only having augmented reality on your phone to, also have it in front of your face, so you don't really have to. Oh, look at that!
Let's flex it a little bit. The Ray-Bans, yeah.
Oh, nice. That's very nice.
They're
Yeah,
not
but I
AR
think
glasses. Yeah, they're not yet.
no, but they already have, the camera and yeah. But I think this is going to be very interesting. Also because augmented reality then not only becomes, a source for entertainment, but also for utility. We can start using it, for example, when you want to learn a different language, and you just put on this application on your wearable, and you can actually see all sorts of things around you that have the name, but then in the language that you want to learn. Or if you want to navigate on the street, you can actually just have a new layer on top of your reality, which shows you the way without having to look onto a small, tiny screen.
Yeah, I find that to be super exciting as well, and that your hands are free and you're able to go back to experiencing life without always having this barrier of a device between yourself and the moment, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's another thing that we can speak to, is that there are limitations to just the mobile devices that we're publishing for. So I'm excited about seeing how this is kind of going to go beyond the mobile devices. Like you're saying, Izzy, how it's going to actually become part of a whole new layer of our visual field as we're walking through our daily lives. I'm sure in 10 years from now, we're going to look back and say, wow, we kind of knew what was going to happen. And there's also this wonderful gray area too that I always like to leave space for, is just the unknown, because as we go through this journey, there are going to be all kinds of new opportunities and new ways, again, that people say, hey, here's a new opportunity to build something that we can't actually currently predict. And that part excites me a lot about AR, and just kind of seeing how it's going to take on, its own, not its own life, but its own direction, and maybe merging with other industries, especially like VR as well. So not just as a layer, but how it's going to integrate in actual virtual reality. All of those topics are extremely exciting. Keeps me curious, keeps me energized about this industry that is, continuing to grow. Yeah, and so leading into the next question, then, as we kind of address how, I guess, in demand AR and AR skills are right now, I think I can speak for myself. I'm incredibly busy, and I think as well for you, Isabel, your studio I think is doing really, really well. And I think that also means too that you're spending a lot of time building client work. I know we talk on the side about that. You know, you're super busy, and that work is very, I'm sure, very interesting and gratifying. But I'm also quite certain, if you're like me, that there's certainly time and space that you kind of miss that creativity. So if you ever get into that funk while you're sitting there doing this professional work and doing your client work, and you find that your creative self and your soul is kind of, you know, a little bit lackluster, what is it that you do to bring back the creative spice and vibrancy that you have that started you on
Yeah.
this journey?
Well, that's a really good question, actually, because I found myself in that kind of position a couple of weeks ago. We were doing a lot of client work, which is absolutely amazing, obviously. However, I had some free time and I started creating something for myself, and my whole mood changed. I really, I got so excited about it, and that really teach me just now even to reserve some time in your calendar to really work on your own art, because that's the initial drive, why you're doing this in the first place. And I think we're in a very interesting industry where I can safely say that many people that I know that are creating AR are very busy at this point. So that's definitely a good tip, to reserve some time for your own art. And one other small tip that I want to give is definitely make sure that you keep moving and keep, physically healthy, because then you're also mentally healthy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the best thing that I do at the beginning of every day is to exercise, move my body, get that oxygen flowing. When there's oxygen, that brain is working, it's working better, more efficiently, and so on. And also, you know, it's going to be less stress on your back if you're sitting and doing a lot of work. And I'm being super mindful of my posture now as we're speaking that way, so we can all just sit up and readjust. But I do think for myself, if I'm to look for ways to kind of reinvigorate my creative juices, get them flowing, is as well, like you say, kind of go back. And for me, I like to change the tool. So if I'm currently stagnant and stuck and I'm working and I'm building in AR, and that's the kind of client work that's repetitive, I'd like to jump out of that and do something that is still equally as creative, but a completely different tool. So I come from a really traditional background when it comes to creative expression. So a lot of sculpture, traditional, painting, and just illustration. Just changing the tool is usually enough to get me going into a whole new direction. It just triggers something in the brain that's a little bit different. But also curiosity. I think there's a lot of new tech, like we were just talking about, with the wearables opportunities for that. VR. We picked up Oculuses back when those were released last year, and we've actually met up in VR, which is a super cool experience. And you say, okay, how can AR apply to this? And then that kind of starts a whole new conversation, brings you back to where you were, and then you kind of look at it with fresh eyes. And then like just being curious, and we have this conversation frequently about, and talking to one another about the things that excite you is usually a really great way to start the creative juices flowing again. So yeah, those are, I think, really valuable tips, Izzy, that you're offering as well. And final question. Is there a final question? I
Yes,
suppose.
there is a final question.
So my question to you is, if you could ask or give your younger self, creator self, back in 2018 when you were just discovering AR, if you could give yourself advice, what would it be?
Um, so I was thinking about this question, and I think the best answer for me is enjoy the ride. Really enjoy the ride, because it's going to be a wild one. And I don't think we're anywhere near the end at all. I think we're really in the beginning of the ride as we speak right now. And also really to, ask questions, and to, really get into the community. So the Spark AR community is on Facebook, and you can find it there. I think there's now 100,000 people, right? And I mean, I made so many friends in this community. It really, it was really a whole new world opening up for me. And I think, yeah, my biggest advice is just enjoy the ride.
I couldn't agree more. You know, like we get so caught up in doing and keeping up, and pushing boundaries and kind of forward thinking. And it's really important to be present in the moment. Like you're saying, these conversations, the fact that you and I are sitting up here right now, to me is like mind blowing, super cool. And we've got Tomas in the room as well. Like we're just a few creators in the community that just spend a lot of time talking about things that we're passionate about. And I feel like, taking that advice that you've just said, I've certainly done that a little bit, but I know for anyone else as well, when you get caught up, it's really hard to kind of be cognizant of the moment. But certainly, I think that's super valuable advice. If I would have told myself back in 2018, this one's for our creators in the community, I would have told myself, go and find Noland, because Noland has the answers. So those of you who are on the call who know who Noland is, super active person in the community who has really contributed back and given us a lot of help. But besides that, I would also say that like don't be afraid to ask questions and trust the journey, because I remember for many hours we would sit there, and sure, we would get some new followers or likes or people sharing our effects, but at the end of the day it was kind of like, why are we doing this? There was no monetization at the time. We had no concept of exactly where it was going. But that's the whole thing about this industry, right? Is we still are writing the future. We do not have a past to kind of go back and look at and say, okay, well, this is how it's going to go. We didn't know that. So it's just kind of trusting the process. That's what I would have told myself, because look what happens is you stay persistent, you keep building, and you keep being creative, and suddenly a couple years later, you're going to be working for Facebook, helping to foster the creative growth in the community that like for me, that I love very passionately. And it is my goal to ensure that every creator has an opportunity to express themselves in AR or mixed reality. So yeah, advice is just keep pressing on, enjoy the moment. I love that advice. And I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, did you want anything else, Izzy, about the journey, or should we open it up for questions to the audience?
Yeah, I think we should open it up for the Q&A.
Cool.
I was already looking at some of the questions.
Yeah, nice. Well, if you see one that you want to pull up, go for it.
So I see one. What program do you create your 3D elements on? So the program that you just saw, quickly shown, in our presentation, that's Cinema 4D. But definitely another software that is open source and free to use is Blender, and I think that one is really, really convenient. And I think if you're just starting out making 3D. Then I would definitely go for Blender. Also, there's a Spark AR toolkit inside Blender. And you can use that to actually optimize your 3D assets. So yeah, that's why I think Blender is definitely the best choice to do. I just started with Cinema 4D 2 years ago, but now I'm like trying to to convert to Blender.
Yeah, and it's become, there are actually really great plugins as well that Spark have integrated into the workflow, which is really helpful with Blender. Yeah, powerful tips there. I was the same. I think when we both kind of jumped into this, we were like, okay, we need to learn 3D. So the same thing. I remember talking to you in the beginning. I'm like, so how is it that we rig these bones and so on? And that's how we figured out. And I as well use Cinema 4D. Looking as well at the Q&A questions here, there is a question here that Johnny's asked, and he says, are Instagram and Facebook filters the end goal for work created in Spark AR? Or can the program be used to create AR experiences in other online or virtual spaces? So yes, those are one of two products. Facebook does have a good selection of products, and the hope is that eventually we will be able to publish Spark on all of those devices. So currently, there are effects that are actually being pushed out to Messenger. So the family of Facebook apps that you would see, there are plans, I'm sure, in the future to be pushing out AR and integrating that into VR through the Oculus headset. Again, these are kind of, I think, natural integrations and workflow, because it is within the same family of products, that there would be some overlap. So, but for right now, yes, that's kind of the most obvious and result will be if you're publishing to Instagram and Facebook. But like I said, there are within the family of apps a whole bunch of different other opportunities to publish in different capacities. And of course, everything is going to have different functionality available depending on the device or depending on the platform that you publish to. That's always something to keep in mind. And even still the same for Instagram versus Facebook. There are different things that you can do on Facebook. For example, you can do hand tracking in Facebook. Cannot do that on Instagram yet. So, did you want to take question number 2, Izzy? Is there another one there on the top of the list? Yeah, I see one.
What are your thoughts on the AR filters outside of the entertainment field, like learning environments? Yeah, so we already touched that a little bit in our talk. I think there is an absolute massive opportunity for us to, start using these once we have the hardware ready to really start utilizing the wearables. I think then all of a sudden augmented reality will become so much more than only right now entertainment, and it's already starting, and it's already becoming a lot more, but I think that will really be a pivot point, in my opinion. What do you think, Leanne?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, like we keep saying, it's just that when you have this, like, again, we're just so used to kind of being fed information, right? I think the other part of that is the interactivity element, right? So I think the web gave us a slight hint, being able to click through links and then have a response based on that click. But now we're talking about so much more than just a single click, right? We're talking about information that'll hopefully be fed in real time as well. That's kind of moving forward. But even for now, just the education element, there's just so much opportunity. And again, it's more than just the face filter. And I think that's why for this workshop that we're doing, I did select something that is not going to be a face filter. It's going to be World AR and world facing, so that we can start exploring new opportunities that are beyond what we've kind of seen to date for the different effects that we see in the Instagram feed. Okay, there's another question here. How further can we go only with 2D models? 3D modeling is pretty challenging. This is we have a few people who are looking for this, and it says, I may get a chance to work only with 2D assets. I'd like to know what we can and can't do with 2D. Well, that's kind of a loaded question, but I mean, you have to think of 2D as just kind of planar, right? Now you can build something that really has the essence of three-dimensionality when you start stacking 2D. Like I said I think previously, the way that I was coming up with concepts of my 2D work was being able to conceptualize the layers kind of broken out and kind of deconstructing the actual art itself. And because you'll have the capacity, you're going to still create the same 2D work that you would do, but just be a bit more aware of the layers and how you can actually build them out and stretch them out into space and interact with those elements. So you can certainly have 2D elements. We'll show you in the workshop. There are 2D elements that are integrated, but because you're placing them as a texture, it's going to have a visual aesthetic on top of a 3D element that are already built into Spark Air. You're actually combining 2D with 3D and giving it properties to move within 3D space. Is there anything else you wanted to add, maybe with 2D into 3D?
Yeah, definitely. I just put up a slide, so if we can show it. I actually wanted to share really shortly. This is my first effect that I ever created, and it is completely consisting of 2D elements just stacked up in a 3D space. And I thought this is a really good example because this was my very first effect. I didn't know anything about 3D yet, and but it really taught me, and it really showed me, the power of, being able to have more dimensions, not only two. So this was my and my part of the answer.
I love it. That's actually the perfect example. And I was thinking about that too. That's why I threw it back over to you, because I'm like, yep, I remember that effect too, and just how clever it was. And it is absolutely a perfect example of deconstructing and then utilizing AR, where you have to kind of be in the space to actually figure out the puzzle, because there is actually kind of a puzzle element to it. Love that effect. Is it still live? Do you have it on your profile, or is it just it's in the?
I think it's not live, but I think I'm gonna put it back. I think it got deprecated, and then I forgot to update it. But I think it would be nice to put it back.
Yes, I agree. I concur. I'm sure, and in the chat, if you all agree that Izzy should release that again, throw it in the chat. Some thumbs up and high fives. Okay, so there's another question here we have from Daniel, and he asks, "Did you try Procreate to create filters?" So I mean, you can't actually create filters in Procreate, but you can create assets for your filters or your effects in Procreate. It is probably my go-to when it comes to 2D. I'm a Photoshop girl and have been for many, many years, but there is something about a $10 app that you install on your iPad that emulates natural brushes and, chalks and all those gritty, wonderful textures that you can take on the go with you that I fell in love with. And so the work that you see on my profile, the work that you see in the 2D elements, anything that I bring into Spark AR Studio is definitely built in Procreate. So if anyone is looking to build out their own 2D assets, highly recommend Procreate. Like I said, it's a really low barrier to entry. And if you have an iPad, and you have any inkling to do any kind of illustration, super easy app to get into. Highly recommend it. Great question. Thank you, Daniel. There's the question for you, Izzy. Do you see it?
Yes. I was drinking tea, but now my tea is finished, so now I'm drinking coffee.
I love it. So Izzy was drinking tea. Izzy is a little bit further into the day than the rest of us, or at least on the East Coast. Yeah. So I wouldn't judge you if you were drinking something else, but you'd be handling yourself quite well right now. Okay, so there's another question. Can I connect or embed Spark Creations with my own apps? You want to take that one, Izzy, or do you want me to speak to it?
Well, I'm not exactly sure, to be
Okay.
really honest. I think it's really interesting to see because there is actually the SparkAR desktop player and the SparkAR player application on the phone. So you can actually use these effects outside of Instagram or Facebook. However, I don't think you can really build it into a new app. But you can use these player apps to, for example, make interactive installations and other sorts of things. So I think there's definitely many possibilities. But I think, Leanne, maybe you can also add something to this answer.
Yeah, I mean, if I think maybe the question is it a standalone app? No, and it is integrated into Instagram. I think beautifully because, and that was the draw for me, and I think as well for you, is that people already had that installed, right? So, I mean, using it on Facebook was kind of one thing, and it was maybe a few less people, but being a really kind of visual first platform with Instagram, it was a really natural progression to want to build for that platform because there's already a natural audience there. People had it on their phones already. So I think the concept of wanting to have it as a separate app is certainly great, and there was definitely going to be, I think, demand for that. But like for us, I think it was great to kind of have that pre-baked audience in Instagram and the camera and building for that already. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we have a couple of other questions. And from Josephine is asking, do you have any top tips to compress 3D assets for Spark AR? Izzy, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, so definitely if you have any 3D models, an easy way to compress 3D assets is to use the SparkAR toolkit in Blender, and that will actually reduce polygons, and you have like a little slider to determine how low poly you want to go. And another tip I can give is to really make sure that your textures are not too big, because the maximum size within SparkAR right now is 1024 by 1024. And if possible, you can go smaller. If the 3D model is also really small, you can make use of pre-compression before you import it into SparkAR. So there's many different ways to keep the file size down. I hope I answered the question not too chaotically.
I think that totally made sense. And really great tips, with Blender, keeping really mindful eye on the sizes. And again, if you don't get these questions, there are some really great help docs on the Spark AR website. And as well, don't hesitate. I highly encourage everyone that is here today, if you're not currently a member of the Spark AR community on Facebook, that's where we were, that's where we started, that's where the conversation is for the most part, that you can ask questions and things like this. If you've forgotten and you can't find it elsewhere, don't be afraid to ask questions in that group. A lot of really super helpful people there. And so we have another question. and that is, how should I start my AR VR journey? I mean, this is a great start right here. I think it's awesome that you're here joining a workshop like this, right? Like, brilliant. Good for you. And to everyone else, again, who has taken the time to come out and invest in themselves, this is a worthwhile investment. If it's just a few hours of your day, even just this knowledge, sometimes you can sit down and say, I'm going to take time to read about AR. To have these kind of interactive conversations really will give you a whole lot more information, I think, than you maybe would gather trying to pick pieces from the internet and the web. And then like as Izzy said, and I'll maybe throw it back to her to reiterate what she had said about kind of setting a goal with a project. Did you want to maybe speak to that again in your process? Because I know that was a really big part of your learning curve, right, Isabel, when you
Yeah,
first started?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, the question itself, how should I start my AR VR journey, is definitely download the software and open it, and really like start doing it. But definitely, what we talked about before, what really helped me personally in learning how the software works was to have a very specific thing in mind that I wanted to make, so that I could set really like smaller goals to work towards the big goal. And I think that was really helpful. Into getting a result that I really loved and that I really wanted to share.
Yeah,
So,
that's fantastic. And really like valuable advice. So you just have to start. Okay, so I'm having a quick look at the chat. I think we probably will should we do one or two more questions, and then we can get moving on. And then maybe we'll actually take a little break, just a quick stretch, a little intermission, and then get back to the workshop, because that's going to be super exciting. Okay, let's take one more question. Izzy, do you want to just grab, whichever question you feel is
yeah,
jumping out
let
at
me
you, and then
see.
we'll wrap it up.
So I have one from Natalie. Do you think people without an art background can still flourish in this space? I mean, yes, absolutely. I mean, I don't think that you need an art background to, create something that you love, and then share it with others. I think, definitely go for it. I think that's the most important answer for me. But Leanne, you might want to add to this.
Yeah, I mean, so many of the creators in our space, and those that actually inspired me the most, are those that are coming to it with what would not be considered traditional art background. So the technical expertise of the drawing or 3D or sculpture, or whatever it is. These are people who may come from a developer background, who are actually using code to generate organic, incredibly beautiful effects just based on mathematical equation. And again, like from these scripting backgrounds that they can translate, because JavaScript is something that we use in Spark AR. And for people like Tomas, who are sitting, and I can see him in the green room smiling, because that's his thing. And there is something unpredictable and incredibly beautiful about the visuals that are generated by something that is a concrete and kind of set, as you may find people who, like myself, are coming from an art background. So there's a place for all of it. And there's also a wonderful middle ground too, if you're to merge both those worlds. And that's where, maybe we'll leave it on this, is that I think the opportunity for collaboration between creators is massive here as well. So you have these different backgrounds. If you feel you maybe don't have strength in an art background, pair up, like if that's what you want, you are going to be super awesome to be able to succeed and be completely fulfilled without any art background. But if you do feel like you need a partner to kind of, maybe influence you, or add that little extra something to your effects that has an art background, then absolutely, communities where it is, conversations like this. Hopefully you meet people in the chat as you're sitting here. Don't be shy to speak to one another, because this is where it happens, is opening up and having conversations with one another. So yeah, I think that's
Definitely.
cool. All right, wonderful. So maybe what we'll do is kind of step back. We'll let the team over at Dribble kind of come back and reset the room, and then and we can regroup, and then look forward to starting the workshop. And Isabel, I am so grateful. Thank you so much for joining me. I love chatting with you. It's really cool to do it in front of all these people, but yes, I think it's been a
Yeah.
wonderful chat. Thanks.
Thank you so much for having me. it was really really cool, really nice.
Yeah, awesome. Have a great rest of the day, and I'll see the rest of you a little bit later.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much, Leanne. Thank you so much, Isabel. That was really inspiring. And I know we got through a lot of your questions, but there is another Q&A at the end of the workshop. So feel free to keep asking those questions. They were really insightful. So now we're going to move on to our live demo portion where you're actually going to be designing templates and creating assets alongside Leanne. So we're going to give you a 5-minute break now. Stretch your legs, get a cup of coffee, get a drink, and come back refreshed, because there's going to be a lot of learning in next session. We're going to be going through inspirational assets. We're going to be going through a live hands-on workshop, and then also just like a general overview of the workflow that you need to do to actually publish your Spark AR. So you're going to be creating something really cool by the end of this session. So like I said, we'll be back here in 5 minutes and can't wait to see you then. Hi everyone, thank you for your patience. So we've created a poll and we would love to hear your thoughts on what you're most looking forward to learning today. So we'd love you to interact with it. At the moment, I think there's like 92 votes. And these are all things that we are going to cover today, but we'd love to hear what you're most looking forward to learning. We've got plane tracking, tap gestures, procedural animations, integrating 3D assets. Oh, that's a good one. It looks like with the 32 votes, tap gestures and interactivity is the most, everyone's looking forward to that one the most. Not so much plane tracking. Amazing. And then we have another poll. Do you want more Spark AR workshops? I see in the chat everyone's super excited about this one, and we haven't even got into the demo yet. So only 3 people said no. I'd love to hear from you guys. We will be sending a survey out at the end of this session, so we'd love to hear your thoughts on what you liked about this workshop and what you want to see next time. Amazing. So Leanne's just getting ready with all her demo material. We're going to be going over some sort of inspirational assets that have been created by the community, some really cool effects that have been created in Spark AR. So you're going to get all that inspiration before diving into the awesome hands-on workshop. So make sure you have all the resources downloaded and ready. I know Thomas was sharing some assets with you. There are 2 assets that are going to be used. And then, yeah, I think we're good to go. Thank you, Renee, for sharing that in the chat. Make sure those assets are downloaded. I'm going to jump off the stage now and leave it to Leanne.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. Very, very much appreciate it. And thanks for sticking with us. We're going to be building, I think I mentioned in the fireside chat, we're going to be building a world AR effect. And this is going to be done in Spark AR Studio. I know a few of you have mentioned, actually the majority of you have not yet seen Spark AR Studio. That's exciting. So I'm going to actually do a really quick overview of the user interface so you do have a sense of what it is that you're going to be looking at. It's not super intimidating, and there is the chat available for you if you have questions, and Tomas is going to be super helpful in answering any of those as we're going through. And then what you can expect is to build a world AR effect, which essentially means you're going to be able to, once published, place it in the world in front of you and then interact with it. We're going to build out a few different elements as we're going along. Bear with me, this is live, so anything can happen. I promise I won't curse. It's got to be PG. But besides that, there may be technical difficulties. I appreciate your patience if we do have any of them. Hopefully we won't. I think we're done and full up on those for the day. So how about we just jump right into Spark AR Studio. There it is, awesome. Okay. So what you see here is the pop-up screen as you initiate Spark AR Studio. As you can see here, you guys can see my mouse as I'm working here. Is that correct? Let me just see. I just wanted to know that this is still something that you can all see. Yeah, correct? Can you see my mouse? Or no? Yes? Okay. So what we're going to do is take a look at some of the options that are available. When you mouse over any of these previews, it gives you a little hint of what to expect if you are to launch any of these templates. So for example, if you look at all the templates here, you can see we can build out a 3D animated poster. This has a really kind of cool colorized feature that you can go in and tweak. I'm going to let you explore all of those on your own time because each one of them has something really cool that you can learn from. But what we're going to focus on, as I mentioned, is the world object. So we're going to open up Spark AR and jump right into the world object template. And it's going to pop open, and hopefully you can see that. Might take a second. Is it showing up? Because I've got it in front of me here. Do you see, not the pop-up window, but do you see Delapo? Delapo is our preview artist.
Hey, Leanne, can you reshare your screen into the green room? We'll get it up there.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to, thanks all for being patient. We're gonna do that again, and we're gonna give you the actual full screen rather than just the pop-up. There we go, okay. So as I mentioned, introducing Delapo. He's kind of a legend in the Spark AR community because as you'd imagine, every time you open up a project, we are greeted by a cycling visual of Delapo, who's a real person, used to work for Facebook, little known fact, and his recording, along with others. If we're going to take a real quick look at the interface, I'm going to draw your attention over here to the left side, which is in the scene tab, and just below the second icon, you'll see video. If you click on that, you're going to see the cameras here. It's showing my my webcam. I'm going to click on it. You're going to see me for a second in the preview window. There I am. But I'm going to go back to Delapo, who is our default model as we open Spark AR. What a great friend to all of us. He hears all of our woes and troubles as we're going through building these AR effects. You can also choose through any of the other simulation pre-recorded videos and also add your own, but that's something for another day. So let's just have a real quick look at the scene panel here. It's a tree structure, pretty much just like any other software that you jump into. These kind of open and close depending on what is placed in the scene. We're gonna go back to Delapo because so much love for Delapo. And I'd like to draw your attention just a little bit below the scene tree, and that's the asset panel. So the asset panel is where you're going to house all of the assets and objects that you're bringing in to build your scene. This is where they land, and they are grouped out by, I'm just going to close these up so it makes it a bit cleaner to see what we're looking at. And you can see that they're sorted by materials, textures, shaders, these things that you will learn as you're going through your journey in AR. For now, all you need to know is the things that you're bringing in to build your scene are going to land in the asset panel. Now, I think we can also have a look at this main stage. This is where you're actually going to be building your effect, right? So if you take a look, you can zoom in, take a few minutes to get comfortable with your mouse or your trackpad or whatever you're using, and see what happens when you hit command. And when you hit command and you move your mouse around, when you hit option, it'll give you a different view. If you wanted to control the view, also just based on preset views as well, you can just go to view at the top menu here and choose from one of the preset ones, and it'll default to whatever view you prefer to see depending on what you're working on. Now we have a simulator here, as I mentioned, that displays a video of kind of typical movements that might trigger different capabilities when you're working in Spark Studio. And in this case, you see Delapo moving back and forth, and he'll do an eye open and mouth gestures and things like that that will trigger different capabilities as he's cycling through. One thing to note, I don't want to get too far ahead because this is actually not an empty template. It is built with this world object that's already pre-populated. As you see in the assets panel, it's brought in materials and textures. And the great thing about this is that you really just need to go in and replace the items that you're prompted to do. I did close the window already. I kind of did that super quick. It's a habit of mine. When I open a template, there was a little blue pop-up that would actually draw your attention to what it is that you needed to replace in this scene. And in this case, where it says delete me, I've selected it here in the scene tree. That would be the thing that we are going to replace. And we are building for the world-facing camera, so we're actually going to make sure that we actually don't need Delapo running through the simulator. It's going to be a world space background, which you can find When you go back to the cameras there on the left scene, it's going to be the last one that's doesn't have a human in the actual view, because it's going to be in the space that we are working with. So without further ado, I think I wanted to just also do one more note of what happens in this context menu. If you click on one of the items in the scene panel, you're going to see over here on the right side of Spark AR Studio that it actually changes what's called the inspector panel. And so, for example, if I click on looping animation block, which is this container that's holding this blue spinning object in the space, you can see that there are a whole bunch of different parameters that are being displayed within the inspector panel. So if we click on looping animation, let's play with this just for a minute. Click the spinning on and off, you see what happens. If you increase or decrease the speed, you can see what happens as well, amplitude, frequency, and so on. And this is already preset. And if you wanted to publish this as it is, you could actually publish this, this small moving object in 3D. We're going to go a little bit further. I would like to actually, I'm going to share with you the, see if I can share this. I'm going to stop out for just a sec and share what the actual project is that we're going to be working on. So I'm going to send that one over to our share space. Let's see if we can bring that one up. Okay. Let's see what happens when we hit play. This is what we're going to build. You see that? I captured that earlier. And it's based on an illustration that I did as I was building out a few concepts for that book we were talking about. So super colorful, vibrant, some activity going on there where you can see those circles are moving, and there are little spheres that are moving around the tree. What we're going to learn is how to bring those 3D assets into Spark AR. You can actually choose whichever one you want. I'm going to show you a whole library of different 3D assets that you can bring in. I chose this because it was really similar to the artwork that I had created, and I'm going to actually share that with you now as well. If you want to take a quick look at what it was that inspired this. Just have a look here. They're going to share it out for us on the Dribble side. So that's the artwork that inspired the 3D world space art that we're going to be building today. Okay, so let's go back and let's just get going on that. Hopefully, actually by now, you have already downloaded the assets. You're going to see there's the purple and the blue graphics that we're going to bring into Spark AR. That's really essentially it. Everything else we're going to be pulling out of the Spark AR library, which is really awesome. Okay, so we're going to go back to sharing the world object. Yeah.
Hi, Leanne. I just wanted to let everyone know that we're going to be opening the lounge as we dive into this live demo. So Thomas is going to be in there. He's a Spark AR expert. So if anyone's having any troubles, needs any questions, needs any troubleshooting, then hop over to the lounge and speak face-to-face with Thomas. We're going to be learning a lot in this session, so we don't want you to get left behind. Thank you so much, Leanne.
Yes, no problem. Thank you. Okay, great. So we're going to go back to my screen share. Perfect. All right. Okay, so let's start by making sure that we have the assets that we need to build the scene that that I had showed you previously there. And I think the best way to do that is maybe address what's currently on stage. So right now we have this blue object that I would like to just pause for a moment. And if you wanted to know how to pause whatever is happening on your screen, just again over here to the left of your scene panel, there's the pause button. Just hit that there, it stops any activity. And what we're gonna do is look for this blue hex, and we're gonna actually identify it by, if you don't know exactly which one it is, go ahead. Like, this is the idea, is you go in and you click things and you kind of see, okay, is this the one? If you don't know, you click on the item, have a look over here to the right, and it says visible. You can turn that visibility on and off to see what is actually active on the stage. So we're going to go in and look for something that looks like that that tree. And what we're going to do that is add an asset. We're going to go into the bottom left of our panel there, and we're going to search the asset library. Now, it's not popping up. I don't know if you can see it behind my... Does the pop-up show, or is it considered, I wonder, a different screen? Oops. It doesn't show up? Okay. Oh, that's too bad. Okay, so what I'm going to do then, I guess, is just share. I'm going to have to jump back and forth, everyone, to the screen sharing from me to the asset library. All right, let's go to the AR library. This will pop up when you go to search in the AR library. Awesome. Okay, so you can see here the AR library. Just going to turn that down there. And what we're going to do is search for the tree. So I want something that's free. So we're going to search for free, and we're going to search for tree, as you saw in the demo that I had showed. And now once we've done that, hit enter, and you're going to view all. So the one that I liked was that kind of fun and playful pine tree. You can see here, there's some specifications. So this is what you want to be mindful of. And we were talking a little bit in the fireside chat about the actual file size and the polygons. So take a look at the specifications here. The vertices are low, geometry is low. That's great. We don't want anything for the whole project. I mean, max should be 20,000. That's quite heavy. You want to keep it as light as possible. When your effect is light, that means that more people are going to be able to view it on all types of different devices. So keep mindful of that as you're bringing in assets. I'm going to import this for free. And what's going to happen is you can see there it's downloading. If you haven't yet logged into Sketchfab, that's going to prompt you to either create an account or log into your existing account. But for me, I've already done that, and it's staying residual in the actual app, so I don't have to log in every single time, which is super cool. I'm going to click done, and we're going to go back to Spark AR. So I'm going to stop sharing that one, and we are going to go back to Spark. Dribble is doing an awesome job in the back end, keeping up with this back and forth. Thank you all. I'm going to do that a couple more times. And now when I've gone back to Spark AR, you're going to see back in the assets panel that now Pine Tree has been added to our asset group. So if we swizzle down and we open up that item, we're going to see that the Pine Tree here, this is the 3D asset. Let me keep my simulator over here. And what we're going to want to do is replace the blue item that we had previously in the original one that we had opened up. So this box indicates it's a 3D asset. We're going to take that box and we're going to bring it to where you would expect the direction, which says drag here. So you drag it on top of drag here, and it's going to land in the proper place on stage. Now, it's not showing up on stage. Why is that? Well, because I actually paused and stopped the playback. So we're going to restart it again and hit play, and now it's quite large. Hopefully some of you are following along. I'm just going to take a real quick look in the chat and make sure that everything is okay and see if there's anyone who is struggling. Hopefully no. Okay, so I'm going to jump back in here. A quick look. So hopefully you are now all loading in some sort of 3D asset. I'm going to go back to the scene tree, and where it says Pine Tree, because it's moving and I want to resize it, I'm going to hit pause again so we can get the right size of this item. And there are 3 buttons just above the stage here. And what you want to do is explore those just for a minute. So the far left says it's going to adjust the position of the object. The one beside that is going to rotate this object that we have selected. And to the far right of that is going to be the scale. This is the one that we're looking for because I am finding that this tree looks a little bit large, as you can see in the inspector window. And to resize that, you have these different handles. Now, if you are to mouse over the box in the center, the whole thing turns white. That means that it's going to scale up or down proportionately on all directions. So we're going to do that, and we're going to scale it down. There it is. You can still see that that blue anchor that we had originally started with is still there. And I didn't delete it. It says delete me, and I didn't. I just couldn't couldn't bring myself to do it. But before we delete that, I'm actually going to pull the drop shadow out of there. We may not want that anchor, that blue item there. So if you click on anchor placeholder, we don't want the placeholder. We're going to delete that. It's going to leave the drop shadow. But now you can see there is no tree that's visible. We're going to want to, again, start it up. There it is, it's showing up. I know that in this tree structure, it's very similar to Photoshop with layers. So how you actually structure your layers is going to determine where your item sits in the actual effect build. So anything that's kind of at the top is going to be at the bottom, which is interesting. It's going to show up behind or below whatever object is below it here. So I want the drop shadow to be beneath the pine tree. We're going to actually bring that down beneath the pine tree. And then we're going to want to bring that pine tree up. So going back to these buttons again at the top, we're going to go to the move tool, which is going to move the tree. And if we grab the right item, I grab the drop shadow, make sure that you're clicking on the item that you want to move and then move it up. So there we go. So if you look in the preview in a window, you're going to see that there's actually the drop shadow there. You're going to see the tree as well. I don't mind the size of this. Let's kind of move back and see what it looks like. You can kind of see your view of the camera. I mean, we can probably make it a little bit smaller. I'm going to go back to the sizing option, make it a tiny bit smaller, because I know that there are going to be a bunch of other elements that we're bringing in. Back to the move tool. Okay, there we go. So that's cool. And I'm actually going to pause it because the spinning is making me a little bit dizzy. Okay, so next, that's actually very cool. We've got a 3D item and it's in our space right now. Now we want to, if I'm to refer back to the item, the illustration, if you recall, that was there was a green kind of base. So I'm thinking there's probably a 3D asset within the Spark AR library that is either maybe a round ball or some sort of half ball. I know for sure that there is one. We're going to jump back over to grab that asset. So we're going to hit add asset, and again we're going to have to swap the share again. So we're going to search asset library. We're going to jump back into Sketchfab. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. I'm going to keep you busy on the side there. We're going to jump over to. Oh, it didn't pop open. 1 second here. Thank you all for your patience. I'm going to add the asset, search the asset library, should open up a window. Oh, I don't see it. Why is that? Can you see the AR library now as I'm sharing it? Can't hear.
Hey, Leanne, can you share your screen into the green room again?
Yeah, I can see it now. There we go. Perfect. Okay, great. So as we had done previously, we selected that tree. And now what we're looking for, let me just jump back to this item. How come I can't see it? Should just share the whole screen. It might be easier if we share the whole screen, I don't know, instead of jumping back and forth. And then that way, we don't have to just we'll just have the chat and it might look a little bit funny, but let's do that. And then, because I find that this flow is a little bit choppy and it's kind of hard. So let's just go with the whole screen. So it's going to look trippy, but let's see how it goes. Here we good? Yeah, there's that trippy bit. That's okay. Right? So I'm going to be relying on the audio here. Okay, how are we looking? I can't really see how it looks. Does it look good? Yeah. Okay. So we're going to go back to the library. There it is. All right. Just stay on the top. Come on now. All right, everyone. Sorry about that. It's going to be a little bit funny. So we're going to actually just go into the 3D objects. We're going to look for 3D shapes. And we're going to look for the half sphere primitive and bring that in, import for free. Okay, so done. And go back to Spark AR Studio. Anytime now. Okay, I'm going to actually bring it back here. Thanks everyone for the patience. So it was a little moment. We're back into Spark. Is it working? There we go. Okay, thank you. Fantastic. So now we've brought that half sphere in. You're going to take a look in your assets panel. And we want to bring that in just below the pine tree. And again, open it up. You're going to look for that box. That means it's a 3D item. And you're going to drag that up. And it's going to reside just below the pine tree. So you can see how it goes from a blue box to a blue line. That means it's going to just drop it into that hierarchy. And if you close this item, you're going to see where it sits there. It's very, very small on the stage. So we're going to need to zoom in. And just like the tree, we're going to scale it up. As you mouse over it, when it turns white, you're going to be able to see that you can move it. In this case, we want to scale it. And we're going to scale it out. Maybe flatten it a bit. Make it a bit wider, not that wide. And now we have a really nice ground for our pine tree. And it is super scaling. There we go. Come on now. There we go. Okay. Now you'll notice that this is white. We can very easily, if anyone's having funny issues when you click on it and it kind of jumps large, you can just drag on any of the nodes if you wanted to kind of make it a little bit wider rather than scaling it all proportionally at the same time. So when you click on this item in the tree, you're going to open it up and see that the half sphere has a material assigned to it. Right now it's white. If you want to know what the name of the material is, you click on the item in your scene tab and then look over to the right in the property in the asset panel. And it's going to say the material name. So I'm just over here on the right. You can see that this material is called half sphere. Now, what is material? Material is basically what gives it the visual texture. And if we want to make any changes to that, we can do that in the asset panel, which is just at the bottom left. And we're going to see materials. We've learned that the name is materials half sphere matte. So we're going to look for that within the materials asset panel. Just below here, it says half sphere matte. And once again, once you've selected something on the left side, you're going to look for the different properties and the ways that we can change it. Here I can see the color is white. I want to make it green, I think was the photo that we used. It's good for ground, for grass. And once you're kind of happy with how it looks, hit OK. And there you can go ahead and actually take a look at the different types of shaders that we have. Some of them will, be a bit more reflective. Others will just kind of give it a soft hue to it. So you can go in and play with the different shaders afterwards. I would suggest physically based right now. You can actually change how it looks. You can see that in the preview window. You can change the actual parameters. Some are a little bit glossy than others. Again, it's up to you. The wonderful thing about all of this is you can personalize it to whatever your taste is. So now that we have the tree and we have a base for it, again, if we are looking at the reference photo, which I don't think we can see because I'm still just sharing Spark. That's okay. So what we're going to do is go in and grab a few more assets from the Spark AR library. And I'll just go in and I'm just going to import that. You know the drill. We're going to go to the search asset library. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to grab something that looks like the mushrooms that were on the base of the pine tree. So I think I do have to share it because you probably won't know. Is it coming through? It looks very, very blurry. to working. So sorry for these technical difficulties, everyone. There we go. Great. Okay. So again, in the AR library, we're going to be looking for something that is probably free and looks like the mushrooms. Mushroom, and we're going to have a search for that. Again, the wonderful thing is how you can make this your own is you go through there, take a look at the ones that kind of appeal to you. And they don't even have to be mushrooms. I mean, any of these things, you could replace that tree with a Halloween house. You could replace it with a Christmas tree. The idea here is that you know where to find the assets. This is where you're going to find them. And then you can kind of build out your own little 3D maquette of what it is you want. I'm going to choose those blue mushrooms. They're kind of fun. I see here, again, the specifications, the geometry is quite low, so that's great. I'm going to import that for free. It comes back in. I'm going to stop sharing that one. I'm going to go back into Spark and start sharing that. Lots of jumping around. Thanks for your patience, everyone. Okay. There it is. Do you see it? Okay, great. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, we're back. And it is time to play it again, see where we are. Okay, great. I mean, I don't think we're going to keep that spinning. I'm actually going to pause. I don't want it to spin. It's completely up to you if you want to keep it going. I think mine keeps disappearing because it's probably tired of playing. So my apologies if it keeps disappearing. That's not how it's supposed to be. But because I probably would need to reboot after all the different technical things we've been going through today, it doesn't want to display. And that's just what happens sometimes when you have a software that's always changing for beta. So we're going to go back to that looping animation block. I'm going to just turn off the spinning. I'm going to hit play again. It's going to display. It's not going to spin. And we're going to bring those mushrooms into this scene. Thank you all very much for your patience. And hopefully you're becoming a little familiar with how to bring things in and then resize them. So again, in the asset panel, we're going to be looking for mushroom. Low poly, we're looking for that box again, because that means it's 3D. Once we grab that, we are going to take it up into the null object, this looping animation block. We want it just probably above that half sphere, because that, and see how large it is when it comes in. That would be a really good place to have it. I'm going to take that and drag it above the half sphere. The line means it's going to drop it into that area. And we're going to resize this. You're probably becoming familiar with that. It is on the resize handle, and we're going to bring it all the way down. I'm going to just do it with the track here. There we go. And you're going to be able to, again, move it into whatever position. Make sure that you're referencing the preview window there so you can actually see what it'll look like in the space. And soon we're going to be able to preview it on your phone. We haven't even talked about how you're going to be able to do that. But once we've kind of got a few more elements, I'm going to show you how you can push it to the phone. And hopefully, I'm just going to have a quick look in the chat there. And hopefully, Thomas is giving you some assistance with some of your technical questions, because I know that the dragging and the moving can be a little bit funny sometimes if it's resizing, but it looks like hopefully you guys are getting the help that you need there. And I'm going to just move that back up. Again, you just kind of drag on one of the nodes here to pull in the direction that you want. You can see here in the preview window, I quite like how that looks with the mushrooms there. And just spin it around.
Hey, Leanne, there's
Yeah.
quite a few questions in the chat about the resizing step. So people are asking whether you could go over the resizing step again and how to resize proportionally.
The resizing step. Okay, I see it. So the tree, I see someone is saying the tree won't resize at all. So it's important when you're resizing that you are on the item that you're resizing, and you will see that indicated by it being highlighted in blue. You can also see the name of it as it's selected in the scene tree. So let's take again the example of the mushroom. So hopefully this is going to make sense. You can get in there and kind of zoom in a little bit. Sometimes when it's a little bit bigger, it's going to be easier for you to grab. So again, play with your mouse and make sure that you're using your track pad or your mouse to zoom in. Now, when you're mousing over the handles, you can see the one that is highlighted, the direction that it's going to pull or stretch or move. Like right now, I'm not going to stretch. I probably want, in my mind, I'm thinking, I want to stretch this, but it's moving. How come it's moving? If you go up to, again, the top of your stage, you're going to see these 3 buttons here. These are your manipulators that are going to change the shape and the location and the rotation of the item that you have selected in your scene tree. So again, we're going to select that item. It's shown up highlighted in blue. I want to scale this. So if you forget which is which, I mean, the icons will show you that that little box goes to a bigger box. So that means scale. But when you hover over here, you see that it says it edits the scale of the selected object. If you forget, here, if I mouse over this middle one, it's going to say rotate. And here on the left, it's going to adjust the position. So back over to scale. Now, when I highlight one of these nodes, it's going to scale it upwards. See how just this one white one is selected? It's going to scale upwards because that's the one that I've grabbed. If I want to scale it on the width, this single one here has been highlighted white, and it's going to make it wide. Now, if we want to do it proportionally, we go over this middle box here. You see how everything is turned white. If you want it to be in proportion, like right now, if I'm to scale it, you just click and drag from that white box and it'll scale it up and scale it down. And I'm going to take a quick peek in the chat there and see if that hopefully helped. I think that that probably addressed a couple of the questions. I hope so. Let me know. Yes. Okay. Awesome, Hazel. I see that it did work for you. Perfect. Keep dropping in those questions if you have them. These things are kind of intuitive and I will keep moving along, but I do want to be aware of anyone who does have some difficulty because absolutely when it's new, it can be a little frustrating if your tree is, far too large and you can't even see what's going on your stage. So, okay, awesome. Yay. I'm happy to see. Oh, so Victoria says so your tree won't resize. Make sure that you've got the tree selected. See how I've tapped it? You can actually tap on it in on your stage, or you can just go back over to the left and make sure that you look for that name. This one is called, what is this one called? Pine, I think it was. And it's in the drag here for me. You can actually move it above or below. It's kind of independent, doesn't matter. But as long as that one is selected, then you're going to be able to go to your resize tool and again, resize everything. It says that it is selected and scale. Setting is active, but nothing happens when you drag. Click and drag. Try click and drag, Victoria. And then also jump into the lounge. That's where Tomas is going to be super helpful and help you with those really specific questions. We're going to keep going on a little bit here. I like that there could be the potential of reusing assets. So a way that we can keep our file size down is using what we currently have in our asset panel. And rather than bringing in new ones, we can actually duplicate them. So we're going to do that with the mushrooms. Let's click on the mushrooms. You can do that in your scene panel, or you can do it on the stage. I like to keep everything kind of compact. It gets a little confusing, so I close up all of my arrows just so I don't get lost in the tree. And you're going to right click on mushroom, and we're going to copy. You can also just Command C and Command V, but in this case, I'll show you visually. We're going to right click again, copy, and then we're going to paste. And what that does is it just drops another one. You don't see it because it's actually done it right on top. Now we're going to go back to these manipulators at the top of the scene and click on the move tool. Now you see these arrows is the direction that we're going to be moving it. I don't necessarily want to move it up. I do want to move it over to the right. Yep. Hey, Madeline. Oh, no? Oh, just Renee saying hey. Okay, yeah. We're going to move the mushrooms over to the right. So I just, once again, I chose the arrow, this is the direction that I want to move it, and I pulled it, and it will actually constrain to that location, which is wonderful. So if you wanted to move it on the line, you can just do that and drag it, move it over. Now, I am not one for repetition. And the great thing about reusing assets is we have the capacity to resize and to rotate and to scale to actually make it look like it's a completely new asset. On top of that, we have the capability of actually even changing the color and the hue. We're going to keep it really simple, keep them all blue, and we're going to now use the rotate tool, which we have not used yet. So it's that middle one at the top of the stage, and you just kind of find the middle ground here. In this case, when I highlight over the blue median in the middle, it's going to turn white. When I click and drag, it's going to rotate those mushrooms. And now it looks like it's a completely new set. And we're going to scroll over and move that back. Cool. All right. So let's see how it looks. I can hear you. Awesome. Okay. Let's see what else we can add here. So I want to, let's just go back for a moment and look back at our reference photo. I'm going to share that out so we can have another quick look and make sure that we know what it is that we're looking at. Give you guys a couple seconds to catch up. And here it is. So let's have another look at the inspiration. Take a look in the chat there. Okay. So we're sharing the art. Okay. So having a look at this again, we've got the tree. We have those, what would be little, I don't know what they were in my illustration. We're calling them mushrooms now. So we want to bring in those stacks of the three purple circles. Now, this is where we're going to learn how to bring in an asset that we've created ourselves. To this point, we've pulled in assets from Sketchfab. Now we're going to go onto our computer. I'm hoping that you have downloaded those assets. We're going to pull them from your computer and we're going to bring them into Spark AR. So let's stop sharing that. We're going to jump back into Studio, present that. There we go. Just 1 second. Are we sharing? Yeah, it just takes a second. I love technology. Thanks. That's great. Okay, and we're back. Cool. So we want to bring in those purple assets. And while we're at it, I'm actually going to go in and I'm going to grab the other blue background. You'll see in the effect that there's a blue background. There's really only two assets, and we're going to bring them both in at the same time. So again, we're going to reference the add asset in the bottom left of our interface here, add asset, and we're going to import from computer. Now I already have it to the folder where I need it. We want the purple ring and we want the blue circle. If I hit shift while I'm selecting those two, it's going to select more than one at a time. We're going to open that. You're going to see those pop into the asset panel. Now, again, to kind of make it more visible and easy to see, I'm going to make all of these flattened up in the tree system so that it's not so spread out and hard to see. It is in the texture asset. So it came in because a texture, let's have a quick conversation about how I guess objects are treated when it comes to bringing in materials and giving them some sort of characteristics. So I always look at objects, like the 3D objects that we brought in, to be like a person. And then what we do is we take material, so like clothing, and we put those on the person or the object. And the material itself actually has a texture. And that's what defines the color or the bumpiness or the actual texture of what that material is. So there's kind of three elements here. What we've just brought in is a texture. Now we have to apply that texture to a material. So the material that we are going to create is going to sit on an object. Now, let's just kind of back up and decide what kind of object we would want to bring in for that circle. Now, I'm doing this because it's 2D, and in this case, it's a plane. It's a flat plane. It doesn't have 3D properties. I built it in 2D. This is the conversation we had kind of previously in the fireside chat, where we're going to take a 2D element, we're going to put it on a 3D element, and then we're going to put that into the scene in this 3D scene. So pause for a second. Think about what the object is called. It's called a plane. So we're going to add an object that's just under our scene tree. And here we're going to look for a plane, right? So you can just see here, you can search if you want, but I can see just below there, there's a plane object. A plane has 3D properties, and that's wonderful because we're going to want to be able to manipulate it in 3D space. So we're going to insert that plane, and it just drops into the camera view. We want it to still be on this plane tracker. We want it to make sure that when the plane tracker moves around in space, that it moves along with that. So we're going to drop it in underneath the plane tracker. And I'm going to say it's going to be, let's put it just above the mushroom. And there we go. Let's be really smart too, and let's name this. And we're going to call this circle. We're going to have 2 sets of circles. So we're going to do circle 1, bottom. So this is going to be the bottommost, the first set of circles. Wonderful. How about we get it visible? Because right now it's buried underneath the grass. And again, we're going to be looking at these manipulator tools. You guys are going to be master manipulators once we're done. And we're going to hover over the direction we want to move it in. It turns white, and I can see it in behind that tree there. I want to move it over. Let's get it out from behind the tree. You can see in your preview window there that this square, this checkerboard square, is now out from where it started and looking where it could be, probably resized. Why is it a checkerboard? So remember we were talking about there's an object, you put the material on that, and then that material has texture. Right now it's just an object with no material. So what we want to do is create a material for this. I'm going to select it. It's either going to be in the scene tree that I selected or on stage here. And once I've done that, I'm going to move my preview window. I can see over here in the properties panel, there's an object called, or there's a property called materials. Now, by just selecting this plus button, we are going to create a material that is associated to the selected object, and it will automatically create a new material when I press on this option. So there we go. You can see created material 0. I'm going to want to rename that, associate it to the object that it is, which is going to be circle 1. We're going to just call it a circle material because we're going to use that material for all of the circles. So now it's gray. It's not that purple circle that we wanted. And this is the texture part now. So we want to define the texture of the material that's sitting on the object, that plane. I'm going to click on that circle material, make sure that it's selected, and over in the inspector panel, I'm going to look for the word texture. Okay, that's a keyword if you forget. And we're going to choose the file from the ones that we've already brought in. That purple ring is that circle that we want to apply to this material. And once I've selected it, there it is on stage, kind of like magic. And now we have a 2D asset that is on a 3D object in 3D space. Pretty cool, right? Now we're going to resize. So we're going back to the stuff that we've already learned, and we're going to keep practicing. And this is the thing, is the more and more that we do it, the easier it's going to get, and we're going to be able to do it a little bit faster. So I'm going to kind of move along, assuming that you know at this point how to scale things up and move them around. We're going to go back to scaling. Let's bring it up. Now there's a very interesting point that I can see here in the preview window. I can see here on stage, it looks fine. It's transparent, but if you look, as I'm scaling, you see how there's a white, if you look here, you can see that there's a white background. Let's see if I can get a better angle. It doesn't show it in this area, but you can see it in the preview. You see there to the right, there's a white background. It means it's not completely transparent. Now we have to define that in the material. You have to say, this is a transparent object. You don't want that white box around it. So once it's selected, we're going to look at the material, the circle map material. Look at the inspector panel. All the way down at the bottom, there's an item called alpha test. And what that's going to do is remove the white opaque background. And you can see here, let's just have a quick look in the preview window there. When I turn it on and off, you see that there's a box, that bounding box. It shows up and it disappears. We want it to disappear. And then it's going to be transparent. And now you've made a 2D object into a 3D object, and we're going to actually just duplicate that several times over. So I'm pretty pleased with that positioning. Let's just move over, and maybe I'll do a different view here and move my menus around. Yeah, this is kind of a high level view. See, if you spin it around, you can kind of see it from a different angle. I'm probably going to want to move that back. So I'm going to select the circle, go to the move tool, use that arrow you see to just move it back. Always kind of checking the preview to make sure it's how I want it to be. Great. I'm quite pleased with that. And now we're going to go ahead and duplicate. Let me take another quick look at the chat. I've been buried in 3D space, not in the scene panel. Okay. Can't see in the scene panel. It may be buried in one of the other objects. Could you open up all of, I'm just addressing some of the questions in the chat. And some of you are saying that you can't see it in the scene panel. It's in the 3D space, but not in the panel. Okay, so you probably want to open up all of those objects and make sure it's not buried in one of them. That's interesting. Sometimes you may want to start and stop. If you can't see it, you can say you can see it. Okay, so people can see it. And sometimes it's in the camera, underneath the camera as well. Sometimes when we open it up, it just drops into camera. You have to pull it down into the plane tracker. Okay, so if there are more questions, don't forget to go and have a chat with Thomas in the lounge. I'm going to select that and we're going to duplicate it. So you can do it in the scene tree. You can right click and you can copy. And then you can also paste. Now, be mindful of where it pastes it, right? So that one has dropped down below the other two items. I want to bring it up. I want to keep those circles together and I want to rename it too. So this is going to be circle 1 middle. So I think we're going to do middle, or we can do we'll just do top because we are being mindful of time. So we're going to just do bottom and top. And make sure I move it because it's just going to appear exactly where it was. So that's kind of cool. Now we have those two, they are stacked. I'm happy with where they're sitting. And let's duplicate both of those. I've selected Shift at the same time. So we're going to duplicate them at the same time. Control or Command C, Control or Command D. Now you see exactly probably what happened to several of you. You said, I don't know where it went. It drops it into the camera tree. So we're going to grab those both, circle 1, bottom and top, and we're going to bring them down with the other circles. That line indicates that's where it's going to drop it. Perfect. I'm going to rename them so they're not all circle 1s. Yes. How are we doing? How are we doing for time? Everything okay for time? People focus. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I've renamed those circle 2, bottom and top. We're going to have to move them over. So let's select both of them. Use that arrow. You can do that at the same time. Drag them over. And now we have 2. So remember we talked about when we're duplicating assets, just the slight tweak in rotation and even size will actually make them look really different. So with them both selected, I'm turning in this middle manipulator using the rotate button just to give it a bit of difference, right? You don't want them always being kind of exactly the same parallel. This gives it visual interest. And selecting both of them again, I'm going to do that in the scene tree to make sure I'm selecting the right ones. I'm just going to scale this one a little bit less because I quite like how it looks when it's smaller. You'll have to move the top one down. Okay, cool. Hopefully you all are following along because what we're going to do now is take a look at what happens on the back side of the material. There's something that I didn't mention when we were building this material, but you'll see that on the one side we can see it, but once we move around to the back here, it disappears. Why is that? It's because we haven't defined that material to be double-sided. So this is a good practice in finding what you have created and going back. Now we want to find a material. We know that the material will be stored in the assets. If you've forgotten, go back here under assets, look for the word material, and then it's this material here that we've created. We want that to be double-sided. Now because I copied and pasted, it's created a couple of copies of that. Best practice is that I would just create one material and apply it to all the circles, but for time, I'm just going to go through, make sure all of those are double-sided. And once I spin around again now, you're going to see, yep, you can see both sides, right? Cool. I can see that these ones are actually kind of stuck to the tree. So I want to grab those and just move them back a bit. And then, take your time to define what your scene is going to look like. we're pretty much done. We're going to get right into animating really soon. Hopefully we're doing okay here. Yeah, it looks like we're okay. Awesome. Okay, so let's think about the other elements that we wanted to include. There goes my mouse. 1 second, y'all. Okay, just give me 1 second. Oh, you're kidding. Okay, very good. That's great, Tomas. Thank you. It's just, you know what, folks? It's just sometimes we just have technical difficulties. That is life. Thank you all for your patience. Awesome. Okay, so let's have a quick regroup here and look for our inspiration. Hopefully you all are following along pretty well. Just gonna have a quick look in the chat. No, it's not broken. It fell off where I was holding it. Scroll around too much. Okay, so I'm going to bring up again the visual of what I want to share. Okay, cool. It's coming up. Awesome. All right, there's that visual again. So we've done our mushrooms, we've done our ground, we've done our trees, we've done the circles. Like I said, I'm only doing 2 just for time's sake. Let's get those little spheres in there and let's animate them. Let's get animating. We're ready. I think that's super exciting. Cool. Let's go back to Spark. And I will share that up. Awesome. Excellent. Okay. So as you would expect, we do not have to create the asset for the circle or that sphere that we saw in that preview. We can actually pull it from the asset library. So I'm just going to go ahead, go in there. I guess we could share it. But what you're going to be looking for in that, yeah, I may as well share it. Sorry, Madeline, keep you busy. Because I want people to see what I'm searching for, as I'm going through and looking for these assets, right? So it's best to just share it. Okay, go. Cool. All right, there it is. Back in this asset, but you're going to be really familiar with this one too, which is really good. And we're going to search for, we don't even have to search for words. We can just actually look here and there's the 3D shapes. Let's go back there. Sorry, that was super fast. 3D objects, 3D shapes. Okay, there's some default shapes that we can use. We just want, so there's a high res sphere, don't need that. We just need the sphere primitive. I clicked on that one there. I see it's super small. It's like 4 kilobits. And then we're going to import that for free. There we go. You know where that's going to end up. That's going to end up in the asset panel. A lot of repetition here, and that's actually very good because that is what's going to teach you when you have repetition. That's how you're going to learn the repetition of moving these and resizing these things. You're going to get really familiar with the tool as you continue to repeat the same actions over and over. World object, there we go. Awesome. Okay, I hope that we can see that. Is it still? Are we sharing? Yeah. Okay, cool. Yep, I see it. Awesome. Okay, so we have imported our sphere. I see it here in the asset panel. It says sphere. Very cool. Now, when we bring the sphere into the 3D space, we could just bring it in as the sphere. But I know with intent that I'm going to want to create an orbit. Now, to create an orbit, it's going to have to kind of have a bit of width. So I'm going to want to take the space that it's sitting on and rotate a large space. If I were rotating just the sphere, it's just going to kind of sit on one axis. I want to create a larger axis. And to do that, I'm going to put it in what's called a null object. So I'm going to make it something that I can move where the pivot point is. If I'm only just building out the sphere and trying to tell it to animate around something, it's just going to spin on its own axle. So what we're going to do is create a null object which is just a container for that sphere, so we can get a nice orbit around the pine tree. Now to do that, again, we're going to go back to the plane tracker, and we're going to create a null object. You can see there's already one there. If I close this whole thing up, you can see that looping animation block is contained within a null object. We're going to go beneath that null object. We want to be within that one, and we're going to right click, add object. We're going to create a null object. I'll do that again really slow. Null object, right click. We're going to add an object. Look over here for a null object. Now, if you don't know where that went, let's just kind of make sure all of our things are opened up. I can see it's been added to the bottom of this list. And I'm going to name that, rename it already, and we're going to name it Sphere 1. We're going to do 2 of them. Now, we want to attach a sphere to that container. So we're going to go and grab the asset that we have, the sphere. Let's open it up. We want to look for that square. Once again, that means it's a 3D object. And we're going to drag it into, if I hover over sphere, I know it's going to be contained within that null object. And when I drop it in there, it's a child of that item. So there it is. I see it on stage now. And I'm going to, again, I see that I've got my move tool. I'm going to pull it up and kind of bring it to the top of where the pine tree is. And when I move around, you can see I need to bring it forward. And I probably, for me, I would like to resize it. So familiar tools, we're getting cozy with all these manipulators. And I'm gonna make it smaller. And the other thing too is I would like to give it a different color. So let's just leave it there for now, and let's address the color. In that sphere, you know, when I come back down here, when I click on it, I'm going to see at the very bottom of this grouping over in the inspector panel that there's a material that says sphere matte. That's the one I'm looking for in the asset panel that I want to change the color of. So I want this in the inspiration photo. It was orange. So when I click on that material back in the inspector panel, I can see the white color option. I'm going to change that to kind of like an orangey color. Hit OK. Awesome. And you can see it's already applied. Again, it depends on what kind of shader. It's going to have a bit more gloss with the physically based one, which is kind of cool. The standard one's a bit more matted. You know, it's up to you how you want to display it. For me, I'm going to give it a bit of shimmer, little roughness there. That's kind of cool. Even make it a bit brighter, actually. I'm OK with that. OK, awesome. So now we have a sphere. Or we did. What just happened there? Okay. I don't know. When in doubt, just undo. Right? So, okay. So we want to actually animate that. Let's get on to that. Are you all ready to animate? So we're going to introduce you to what's called the patch editor. I've been avoiding it to this point, but it is super cool. Below our scene here and below the stage, you can see that there is a tab called patch editor. Right now it's just got dots, but I'm going to zoom out because there's already some activity. I think there might already be something. No, we haven't. Oh, yes, there is. Of course there is. So what's already built into this target tracker is the logic to detect, first of all, what camera is being used. So it's going to give instructions if you're on the correct camera. If you're on the selfie-facing camera, you're going to want to be directing your user to use the other world-facing camera. And these instructions are already pre-baked into the template that we opened up at the very beginning. Now, not to be intimidated, you're going to see a bunch of different what are called patches and then connectors that are bringing all of those together and giving directions. So we can zoom in. I don't want you to be intimidated. If it's the first time you're seeing visual-based scripting, basically it's just patches with different directions. And what you're going to do is connect those logic-based nodes to create some sort of result on the other end. That's super general. But, you know, if we zoom in here, you can see, for example, this initiator is the screen tap. So once there's a screen tap, you're going to see if we're panning, if we're rotating. There are a few different things. Again, don't want you to get intimidated. It's going to look for a plane, which is this world AR object. Just trust that what it's doing is allowing it to be placed in the space in front of us. You can see this looping animation block is associated to that name that you're probably seeing several times over in the scene panel. And that is basically just manipulating that whole object in space in the world camera. I'm going to zoom out. We're not going to touch any of that. I'm going to just suggest don't touch it because that's what makes it all work. And when you zoom out far enough, you don't actually see any more detail. I'm going to move my preview here. I'm not looking at the chat. Hopefully everyone is following. Hopefully. Okay. So again, as you can see, the values are larger. I'm just going to select all of those and move them out of the way. Don't worry if you click and drag. For me, I'm just going to create some space here so that we can do some animation. So what we want to do with this sphere, I'm going to select it here. You can see it's selected in the scene panel, is we want it to rotate around that pine tree. So how are we going to do that? Let's think about the logic of that. So we want that to be an animation. We don't want it just to play once. So that means we want a looping animation. So it's going to be going round and round and round. Okay. And then what else is going to happen with it while it's looping? It's going to be transitioning from one location to another. Okay. So that's another kind of keyword that we would keep in mind when we're building this visual-based scripting. And we want it to affect what? We want it not just to affect the object, but we want it to affect the position of that object. So those are a bunch of keywords that we're going to pull out and remember as we're building the visual scripting for that. So to activate anything within the patch editor, you want to kind of hover over it and you can right click with your mouse on a blank area and it brings up this whole context menu. Again, there are so many options. The wonderful thing about Spark AR is that you can kind of come at it as a beginner and do a few wonderful things to make magic. But if you have a lot of experience, there is so much to explore. And you will always continuously challenge yourself to kind of push the boundaries. For now, what we're looking for is, like I said, the initial thing that we were talking about is a looping animation. Right now I see animation. I would like it to be looping. So it's not just one time. So you can see here, you can either search for it or you can, within the animation panel, hit loop animation. We're going to add a patch. So this is going to control, I'm going to zoom in here, the animation of what? Well, we have to define that. And we will in a moment. We're going to define this item, which I've clicked on, which is the sphere. Now, again, anything that you're going to do in the scene panel is going to affect the inspector. And we want to, as I mentioned, change the position. So in the inspector panel here, you can see every time I hover over one of these arrows, it turns yellow. That means that it's going to pop it into the patch editor. So we want the position. I'm going to click that, and it's actually going to bring the sphere 3D position into the patch editor. So we have a loop animation. We know what we want to affect, which is the sphere. And in between there, we want to create a transition. So when a loop animation starts, it's going to have progress. So again, thinking through the logic, we're going to progress from one transition point to another. So there's that keyword. We're going to look for that word transition. I know that there's a patch for it. There it is. And I'm going to add that patch. Now, I could connect these right now. What I want to do, though, is just talk about 3D space. So we've got the X, Y, and Z. So the X is going to be the position as it's going this way, up and down. And the Y is going to be kind of the back and forth, and the Z is the depth. So we want this to be moving on the Y, right? So we don't want anything to change on the X. We're going to have it where it is and do 0 to 0. If it's on the Y, I don't actually know if these values are going to work. Let's see how they go once we plug them in. Yeah, so you can see it's going in one position. Once I've connected, I did that really fast, but I took the output here and I connected it to the sphere. So you can see that it's just going straight up. We actually don't want it to go straight up like that. We would like for it to loop. And to do that, you actually have to make it look as though it's going in a circle. So it's going from 0 to 1. We want to do, we know like a circle is 360 degrees. We'll just bring it to, say, 359 degrees. And let's see where it went. I think I'm doing it on the wrong axis. Where am I here? And we're looping. Where did it go? Let's pause for a second. I'm doing it on the wrong axis, Thomas. Where's that? It's odd. It's so strange talking to nobody. Get no reaction. That's great. It's okay. I don't know where my sphere went. It's so strange. Okay, no problem. Yeah, I don't know where my sphere went. So odd. Sphere. Oh, it's okay, love. No worries. It's very strange. Okay. Let's just undo these and let's figure out where we're gonna. I just don't want to confuse everyone, but that's fine. Okay, so let's go back to where our sphere is. Oh, there it is. Okay, that's fine. And on our rotation, yeah, I can see it's the Y value. You see how I know it's the Y rotation? Is because when I'm moving the rotation here, you can see here the Y value is the one that's changing, right? So, whoops, it wasn't incorrect. I just don't know where it disappeared to. Okay, well, let's plug that in again and let's see what happens. And hit play. Oh, where it went, Thomas. You know, it's so strange. Oh. Yes, I think you're right. Yeah, it's got the, I'm doing it to the wrong element there. Strange. Okay, well, let's just start again here and see why it's not working. Oh, you're absolutely right. Oh my gosh. Wow. You're absolutely right. Thank you. And that's why I'm just like, sorry, y'all, I'm super tired. You're absolutely right. That's exactly why I'm like, why isn't it rotating? Because I'm doing position instead of rotation. So that's the keyword we were talking about. Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Yeah, I hit the position there when it should absolutely be the rotation. So now, as you can see, it's actually rotating exactly where we would want. It's rotating super fast. So how do we control the speed of that? Well, you actually would change the duration of it. So right now it's moving around at 1 second. We would like it to be maybe 3, nice and slow. And yeah. So what we can also do here is actually change it from being kind of on a level plane. I like to kind of shift the axis a bit, and that would be for me, it would be on the Z. We can go back into the patch editor and change the values of the Z location. And this way, I like to make sure it's consistent on both the start and end. Otherwise, you're going to have it jumping in between. So now that it's moved over as well, we have to kind of move it back to where it should be. It's not going around the pine tree anymore. So we're going to have to add some activity to the X location. How's everyone doing in the chat? Thomas, are people completely lost or are they actually following along? Hopefully everyone's okay there. Perfect. Okay, awesome. I just want to make sure that I'm going in the right direction here. What do you mean? So do you mean that it's spinning on the axis? Like, yes. Okay, so so spinning kind of singularly. Okay, maybe what I'll do is right. So exactly, because the sphere itself, if the pivot is just, and if we're rotating just the object, then yes, it's going to spin in one place. But what we've done is created it, it's part of a container. So the container is the thing that's moving and that has a larger pivot point, and that's how it's moving around versus just kind of being on the singular sphere, if that makes sense. So we are actually animating the container, and it sits at one point on one side of the container, and that's what gives it the orbit, right? And if we're just animating the singular object, then we're just animating the pivot point of the local sphere. So if you don't have yours pivoting on an axis like that with a nice orbit, it's because you probably didn't drop it into a null object to begin with. And we create the null by right-clicking, add object, null object, and then you put the sphere in the null object. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm hoping. Okay, so we're going to continue on. Let's make sure that our sphere is in a position that we want it to be. Now, once you bring your object into the patch editor, for example, the rotation, now the rotation is going to be controlled by the patch editor. If I wanted to change the location, the position, actually, in this case, I can still do that. But once I connect it, it's just going to jump back to wherever it is defined in the transition. So we actually want to bring this more to the right on the x-axis, and I was doing that here. And hopefully, if it starts, whoops, that's too far over. And that's a really large circle. So, you know, like we can certainly define the parameters. You can just go in and change the numbers and, you know, whatever you think. If you want a really large orbit like that, you know, you can keep it at 40. But for me, it's a lot of trial and error when you're doing a visual design of it. Make sure that you're changing both the start and end, or else it's going to be really jerky when it's showing up in the animation. Okay. So this one is quite a large loop, and that's also due to the size of the actual container that I put it in. So let's continue on, because I think what I want to do is add an additional. I want to make sure. See, I'm moving it around here, so you can actually change the position of the sphere container. We were talking about that, right? So I can just move that over to the right, and I like how it's kind of looping around the pine there. It's kind of fun. And then I can duplicate that. So I don't have to create a whole other sphere and a whole, do that process once again. What I want to do is just take the sphere null object that I've created, and I'm going to copy, Command-C, and paste. Or we can just paste it in the tree. Make sure that it shows up where it should. Is everyone still seeing the screen okay? I hope so. Okay, good. Mine did not show up here, so let's, oops. Copy and paste. Oh, okay. So here's another good note. You have to make sure that when you're copying and pasting something that you're only selecting one item, or else if there's anything else in your hierarchy that you've selected, it's going to copy and paste all of those things. So in this case, we just want the sphere. We're going to copy and we're going to paste it, and it creates sphere number 2. So now sphere number 2 has no animation associated to it. And that's because we haven't created anything within the patch editor. If we like kind of how this sphere is moving, I'm going to just grab in the patch editor the loop animation and the transition patch that we've already created. Don't have to recreate them. I'm going to select them both. I know they're selected when they're blue. I'm going to copy and paste. So that's either Command-C or Control-C, and then Control-V or Command-V, and it actually drops a copy of that into the patch editor. Now we just want to make sure that we're associating that to the new sphere. How do we do that? Well, we make sure we're clicking on the sphere, back to the inspector panel, and we're going to hit rotation, not position, because we're going to affect the rotation of this sphere, bring it into the patch editor. And then once I connect this node, you're going to see that this is going to be on the same loop of that sphere, and now they're both moving kind of in orbit. Now, again, when we're duplicating things, we don't want them to look linear in the same. What we can do is shift them. Let's change the actual pivot point and tilt it on a different probably the opposite of what the other one is. So I will go to the Z on sphere 2. I'm going to change the Z position to a minus, which is going to be the opposite of what the other one is doing. And you can see there, it's kind of all over the place. I'm going to want to move it over to the left. You can see here in your preview what's going on. When I click on it, with my move manipulator selected, I'm going to be able to move that into whatever position I want. So, you can duplicate these as many times as you want. The more you have, obviously, there's going to be a bit more weight of the actual effect, but you get the essence of it. You can kind of see these are kind of fun little orbs. We can continue doing that. You got the idea of it. If you wanted to do more of them, you can duplicate the sphere and then duplicate the loop animation within the patch editor. So for now, what we're going to do is just continue on. I'm going to be mindful of the time here. We've got another 20 minutes. So what we're going to do is create a tap interactivity on those circles, those purple circles. Maybe before we go too far, we can actually visualize what this looks like in space. We haven't even done that yet. How do we do that? So to preview what this looks like in world space, we can kind of see it here on our screen. It doesn't really do justice to what we want to see on screen. So what I've done, I think you can still see me, is I've loaded up the Spark AR player on my device. You can get that from the App Store. And then what happens is you will plug your phone into your laptop or whatever you're using, and Spark AR will automatically detect when your device is connected. So if you look at the bottom left of the UI, you're going to see a little blue dot that says test on device. So in this case, when I click on that, you're going to see preview in the Spark AR player because I've downloaded that. I've signed in on my phone, and now I'm going to send it. Oh, what just happened there? Y'all still with me? Hopefully. And I'm going to send it to my phone. Now, I'm going to share my phone. I think I should be able to do that. Just give me 1 sec. I'll get out of Spark here. Madeline, get ready. I'm going to share my phone. Okay, 1 second. Window. Oh, is it there? Can I not share it? Oh no. Let's try. Oh no. QuickTime. Oh yeah, there. Okay, let's see here. Yep, let's do this. Oh no, that's the example. That's not. Oh, it's not going to share. Shoot. QuickTime player is not an option there. Why is that? Oh, that's too bad. Shoot. We really want to see it in the space. Oh, okay. Well, if I did my entire screen for a second, it's going to look pretty wonky, but oh dear. All right. Should I do it? We can hopefully see it on my screen. Would that be okay? Okay, let's see. Yeah, it's going to be a triple mess here. Sorry, y'all. I do want you to see what it looks like. Can you see it? Can you see the QuickTime player? Oh, that's the preview. Okay, well, that's too bad. Let me just let's try and switch it to the phone. Hang on 1 second. Maybe if I just do a new. Hello, everyone. We're going to go to my phone. There it is. Hopefully. We love all these tech things. No, nothing, huh? Okay. Anyhow. Oh, that's too bad. Okay. Well, you're going to have to just trust me that you can preview it. All right. Maybe I can do it. Here, you want to see it? Can you see that? Well, that might work. Oh, that works. Okay, 1 second. You have to see my office. There it is. Oh, okay, well, you're going to actually watch in real time. And let's look for those. Can you see them? Where are they? Oh, see the orbs up there? That's pretty cool, right? So everyone can kind of see it. You can scale it up. And then as we're moving over it, hang on a second, you can kind of see how it is in the space, right? Yeah, I wish I could show you in real time. You can scale it up. But it's working, everyone, and that's super cool. So now what we're going to do is we're going to attempt to go in there, and every time we tap those circles, they're going to start rotating. It's just things like that are what I would call surprise and delight. So, you think it's just a stagnant thing, but you go in there and you interact with it, and suddenly it comes to life. And this is just a really good example of how you can do that. You can make it your own. So I'm going to stop sharing. We're going to go back into Spark AR. I'm going to show you how to do that by animating those circles. Almost there. You guys are doing great. Thank you. Okay, cool. Let's just get back there. Come on. All right, awesome. So at least now you saw how you can preview to the player. I don't have Instagram hooked up for this particular account, but if you were to connect your Instagram to your Facebook account, then you'd be able to send it and preview in Instagram without having to be tethered to your computer, which is very, very cool. Okay, so let's have a quick look at what we want to animate. We want to go in and animate those purple circles. And how are we going to do that? Well, we have to select one. And I'm going to actually show you, I think it's going to be a really quick technique because there are actual built-in actions in Spark AR to do animations. So let me just show you how we can do that. Turn that off for a second. Okay, cool. So we're going to select, let's start with the purple one. Now let's think about the logic again too. We're going to go into the patch editor. So we have to think kind of logically through natural language and then pair that to the visual-based scripting that we have available in Spark AR. So the language is, I want to tap an object, and when I tap that object, I want it to loop an animation, and that is going to loop from a transition point of, like whatever the circle is. Again, like I said before, it's going to be on rotation from 0 to almost 360. And it's just going to keep looping. So let's start with the first part, which is an object tap. So you know that there's a patch for that. We're going to right click in the patch editor. And we're going to look for object tap. So as soon as I start writing object, you can see that there's object tap. I'm going to add that patch to the patch editor. And then next thing we're going to do is talk about the transition. Now, I already have a transition above this, so I'm going to actually just copy and paste it. We're going to probably have to change the values, but that's okay. I could have gone and just right clicked and done transition, but we're going to just zero these out. I probably should have just did it anyway. That's okay. Actually, let me just see if this is the one that I can just do a quick. No, we're going to do the object tap. Sorry about that. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and do the object tap and zero all of these out. So we want to know which one we're affecting, right? So we've got circle bottom, clicked it here. We want to make sure that we are doing the rotation of that item. So I've clicked the rotation arrow and brought it into the patch editor. Let's connect these and see what happens when we get them moving. But we didn't do a loop animation. See, nothing's happening because it's not looping. And actually, I don't think, let's just see. So when you're interacting with the screen in the preview, you can actually see what it looks like when you tap. And to do that, you want to, where's my thing here? This is different. So you use this little hamburger menu and you're going to simulate touch, which is already activated. So once you go into your preview and tap the item, hopefully it's not going to run away on you. There we go. Yeah, it's not going to do anything right now because, yeah, okay. So where did I leave out? I left out my looping animation like we had done here. So when you tap the object, you want it to loop, right? And we're going to go in there and find the loop animation, add a patch. What it does is it switches it on and off automatically. It drops that patch in there because the good thing about Spark AR is it knows what kind of gaps are missing and will fill it in for you. So you want the progress to go, from 0 to 300 and almost 60 when we tap the object. So I'm just going to clean up my patch graph a bit here so we can see them. And what we expect to happen is when we tap the object, it's going to turn on a switch that says, let's do an animation. You're going to spin around and we're going to affect the circle 1 bottom. So let's just see how that actually goes. Let's see if that's actually going to work. Circle 1 bottom is this one on the left. And when you tap on it, it doesn't go far away. It should. No, that's the only problem here. It should go. Tap. Okay. So it's not. And if we had it on my simulator here, we'd be able to test it a bit better too. Because it's kind of funny with my mouse, it's not doing exactly what I want it to do. That's not great. Okay, let's kind of I'm just going to do a real quick preview and make sure that it's working. And I can't see anyone here. Is everybody still alive? Yeah. We've only got a few minutes left. Okay, let's move a little bit faster then. Okay. So if we were to duplicate that action, I want to show you how it's working though. And my preview is just being a little bit funny. So let's start it over again. Stop whenever you're in doubt. Hit play again. And let us simulate touch. So right now what it's doing is it's trying to scale it. I just want to touch. Oops. Let's look at the orbit. That's cool. Let's pan around. I'm gonna zoom in. There we go. I'm hoping everyone is following along. It's quite hard to not hear what everyone's doing. Yeah, it's not working. And that's strange. I don't know why. Okay. So what we're going to do is just keep building this out. And then what I think to be cognizant of time, I don't want to keep kind of doing the same thing over and over if it's not going to work with this preview. I would love to show you on my phone how it's working because it's going to be a bit easier to control. But what we'll do is just kind of leave that as it is. And then we can add the background because I see that we are kind of running short of time. And then we'll come back to this. So let's just add in that one last element, get that animating in the background, and then you'll have your whole scene that you can, again, personalize for yourself. You can bring in, rather than having these circles in this tree, you can, like I said, be a little bit more festive. If you wanted to do something for Halloween, you can replace the tree with a kind of fun little house. For Christmas or for the holidays, you can make that a holiday tree and then have kind of festive presents and things around. This is just a foundational building block for whatever you want to replace those items with. And hopefully you've learned a little bit about how to place them in space, how to bring in your own assets, and how to source the resources that are available for free in the Spark AR library. So, okay, let's bring in that blue background and then and we'll get it animating, and then we're going to be open to hopefully the questions that you have, and I haven't left you completely confused by now. So let's take a look at the plane tracker. Again, that's this whole object. We want to put in behind there a blue circle and make sure that it's animating as well. And I can see here that we have a couple of elements that are still floating. Let's see what happened there. Would like those to be within the null object, right? Okay, good. Awesome. So let's go in here, and on the plane tracker, we want to add another plane. So that blue object that was kind of the wall or the visual behind the tree is going to be on a plane as we did with the other 2D assets. We're going to create a plane and we're going to position it in behind the tree. So again, it drops it into the camera. We want to bring it and make sure it's on the plane tracker level so that as we scale it, it's actually going to scale together with all the rest of the elements. And make sure it's there in the null object. And now I can't seem to zoom. I'm going to definitely need to reboot here, everybody. I'm having a few issues with my viewport. It seems to not want to move. And that's just what happens, I suppose, once we've been working for a while. Okay. I don't know what's happening there. That's just very, very fun and par for the course today. So let's rename that the background. As I mentioned, that plane is going to have to scale up. And we're going to make sure we're selecting the scale item, make it bigger. I'd love to be able to zoom in, and I just can't get there. So let's try a different option. We can actually take a look from the top, kind of see how it looks from there if it's not working. Yeah, it's a funny thing today. That's okay. There we go. We'll just try different views until we get the one that we want. Right. Is everyone still with me? So quiet here. Tomas, everything. Okay.
Spheres and later animating them. And just as a reminder, they can't actually. Oh, hi everybody. I'm Tomas Pietravallo. I seem to actually be on stage now, so you can actually hear me.
Oh, good. Oh, fantastic. Hooray.
Yeah,
I can't see.
so...
I'm completely blind here. I have no idea what I can see and what I can't. So there you are. Hey, Tomas. Thank you for joining.
Yeah,
That's
it's
awesome.
a pleasure. So just as a reminder for everybody, the recap is going to be made available after the workshop. So maybe you can follow along at your own pace. But it seems like most people got lost when adding the sphere and animating them. So maybe you can just quickly go over that again.
I'm sorry, I missed the part that you said there, adding the spheres or the...
Yeah, adding the spheres and animating them. So I'm guessing that just dragging the asset from the asset panel into the scene and later going into the inspector and tapping the yellow arrow to place it on the patch editor.
Okay, so, all right, so we can back up to, let's see here. I suppose bringing it in. So we know that we went into the Spark AR asset library, and that's where we source the sphere, and it's come into the asset panel. And so we're looking for the word sphere in the asset panel, and we're going to grab the 3D object of it, right? So now I didn't just grab that sphere and bring it into the plane tracker instance. What I did was I created, I think this is what is a little bit confusing, right? And I kind of went over it very quickly. But to give the sphere an orbit, I actually dropped it into a null object, because what happens in with just the sphere, when I'm asking it to spin, it's going to just spin, its rotation on its own orbit. And what I wanted to do was to be able to control that orbit. So by dropping it into a null, I could then change the pivot point of the sphere and kind of give it a larger orbit or a smaller orbit. To create that null object within the plane tracker, I right clicked and I added an object and created a null object. So let's just make another one, and we'll name this one sphere 3. Right, so now I'm going to take an instance of that sphere and bring it into that, that null object that I've created. Right, hopefully everyone's still with me. Thomas, are you still there? Again, I'm so sorry. I'm flying blind, so I can't tell if it's actually making any sense or not. It does? Okay, cool. So let's get back over there. See where my object is. I'm going to actually reset here. I feel like this is a bit of a mess with the, I was on a plane tracker here. I was building a plane. So I'm actually going to turn that one off for now, because I can't really see the sphere. So I know that a new sphere has come in here, and if we hit play, you can see the two that are already animated, right? Hopefully we can all see that pretty well. Yes. Yeah, it's been very funny. I don't know. Let's see, now it's completely fine, but it wasn't even moving or tracking with my mouse, but that's okay. It's just because it's very tired and it says, I don't want to do this right now because you've been messing me around so much. And that's completely fine. So what we have to do is kind of figure out where that sphere landed. So to figure out where anything is you click on it, right? So in the asset, in the scene panel, the null that I created, that sphere, I can see now that I can grab a handle and move it up. Let's bring it into position. And we haven't attached any material to it at all. So we want to make sure that on the sphere that we're clicking here, we're going to make sure that we've attached, when we open it all the way up, attached the material to it. And once you've selected it, just take a look in the inspector panel, and we're going to do that sphere material and attach it there. Whoops. Okay, there we go. So now it's going to be the same thing again, that we can take the rotation of this sphere, the null object, and that's the thing that we're going to be rotating. You see how when I click on the sphere, the pivot is different than the actual sphere itself. When I click on the sphere there, you can see the pivot point is more in the center, whereas the sphere itself is a bit further out. And that's what's going to create a nice circle when I rotate the null object. So to show them, I see what you're saying. Like to show them here how it's rotating on that pivot point. I see. Okay, yeah, that's a great example. If we were to, and while it's large like that too, thank you for bringing that up. Because what we can do is just look at the difference between rotating the sphere null object. You see how that goes like that? Whereas if I rotate the sphere itself, it just spins on itself. Does that make a bit more sense? That's great, actually. A good call out to us, right? Did that make a bit of sense? The difference between the null object rotation? Okay, cool. So I'm also just going to resize that. Whoops. You can also do the scale here if you'd like as well. Let's take a little different look at the inspector panel. You can actually change the parameters within the inspector. That's kind of a fun thing there. Oops. All right. So let's go into the patch editor really quickly, and we will animate that sphere. Zoom right in. I don't know as well if you're able to see my screen quite well with the text. It's hard. I mean, it seems large for me, but hopefully you've been able to follow along and see the values as they're being entered. It's very strange just flying blind like this. So we've identified where the other sphere animations are, sphere 1 and sphere 2, right? And what we want to do is duplicate the loop animation by copying Control-C and Control-V, or Command-C, Command-V. And for the sphere that we've just created, we want to click on it, make sure that that's the one selected, and then we add that rotation to the patch editor, and then connect them. Now it's going to be very similar. So you see here how it's animating the null object. It's got a fairly nice orbit there. Does that all make sense? Hopefully. Okay, cool. That's awesome. And then hopefully, if you wanted to change any of the different duration, make it faster or slower, you can do that as well here in the loop animation. That's what controls the speed of the rotation, right? So anyway, if we have more questions about that, absolutely, please continue to ask in the chat. And as well afterwards, we're gonna try and walk through some of this Q&A. It is a fair amount of information, I think, that I've given here today. So, do be patient. But I think the greatest takeaways here are, like I said, being able to use a template to begin with, to bring in assets from the Sketchfab and the Spark AR library, to bring in your own 2D assets and attach them to world objects, and then also just do this animation as well, based on kind of the logic in the patch editor of thinking, okay, I want a loop animation and I want to transition from one space or one location to another, and what you want to affect. So hopefully that's all making sense. And I think we can, maybe just finish up. We'll do that last background that I had turned off while we were working on this new sphere orbit. I'm going to go back to that. It's in the scene tree and it's the blue background. I created a plane just as a reminder. It's turned off right now. I know it's turned off because it's kind of grayed out. Once I select it, go back over to the inspector panel, it's going to be visible again. And it's got that checkerboard, meaning it doesn't have a material attached to it. And it doesn't have a texture. But what I'd like to use is the blue 2D circle that I had brought in and imported. And to do that, I can apply a material to this object. So remember, it's object, then you do a material, and then you give that material a texture to give it that visual personality. So once I've clicked on the object, I'm going to go into the inspector panel. I'm going to create a material, create a new material. Right now it's white. I want to go into the assets, select the material, and then going back into the inspector panel, I'm going to choose the texture, that blue circle. I apply it here. And if you look in the preview window, you're going to see that it's got that white bounding box, just as the purple ones had. We want to remove that and let it know that it's actually just a transparent image. So to do that, once it's selected again, and I look at the material, I can see here on the inspector panel that I can activate the alpha test, and that then, once again, if I turn it on and off, you're going to see it creates that transparency of the bounding box. So let's move that blue background, as I'm calling it, into position. And if I use the move, again, we're going to be absolute experts in positioning things, hopefully in 3D once we're done. Press on this arrow here. It's going to move it back into the space where I want it to be. Maybe bring it up a bit. We can scale it out a little. Then I'm going to show you a really quick way to animate this. Okay, that looks pretty cool. I'm happy with how that looks in this panel. With this selected, let's zoom out here in the patch editor, make some space to create a new patch. What's going to happen is I'm going to utilize what is called like a quick action animation. The item that you want to animate, you're going to go over to the right side of the inspector panel, click on this button that says actions, and we're going to animate it. Oops, there we go. In this case, we're going to have it, let's have it float. So now let's just do a real quick watch. When I hit the blue background, that's what I want to affect. I'm going to go into the actions, animate, and we're going to have it float. And just like that, it's animated. It's created the patch sequence here in the patch editor. And we can go in and we can change the type of animation. This is kind of just bobbing up and down. This little drop-down menu here will change how the animation is playing out. So depending on which one you select is the curve, which controls the animation. Depending on what you choose, you can play with them and see. This is a really good example because it's a nice big object. You can really see the animation variances, but just choose whatever is kind of your preference. So I like it like kind of slow bob. Again, if you want it to be even slower, you change the duration, maybe make it for 2 seconds, and then there it is. So I would really love to preview this on the phone because essentially, this is ready to publish. So before we do that, let's do a real quick preview.
You're using the hi everyone again. There seem to be some issues when people preview their effect on their phone, and that's because you're using the tap gesture both to do the scaling animations and to place the tracker. So maybe you can show people how to use a long press gesture or just remove the plane tracking features.
Okay. You're talking here on the screen tap?
Yeah.
In the plane?
So maybe you can use a different gesture on your animations.
Okay, I think that's fair. And where was that? That was for the object. We didn't actually finish that because we're so short of time, and I see that we are actually probably over time right now. I wonder if we just remove that for now rather than the object. You're talking about the object tap?
Yeah, maybe you can just use another type of gesture. just a long press or rotate, screen pinch, anything else really, aside
You know
from
what? I think what we're going to do for simplicity's sake, so if everyone just goes back in there and just because of timing right now, I'm just being really certain of time. Let's maybe just remove that. I mean, we could go through it, but I think just for time's sake, we'll keep it simple. We won't start changing all of the animations because I would like to affect all of them. Maybe that's something we can pick up after the fact. I do feel like there's going to be a follow up with this, hopefully, maybe within the creator days. Is that where this might live? That we could follow up with everyone? I wonder.
Yeah, we encourage everyone to join the SparkAR community group and SparkAR Creator Days group. So if you're not already a part of it, you can see the link on the chat. It's just a wonderful group full of many, many, many different creators. That's where I met Liane and a lot of very good friends. So just hop on over onto the Facebook group and ask any other questions or publish your work after the workshop.
Exactly. Okay, so when we're testing it on your device too, the thing that's important to note is that you have your SparkAR player open, and then that way it will know that it's ready to be tested there. So I'm going to go one more time here, and hopefully I can share again. Actually, yeah, if I just go to this one here, right, I think, so then we can send it to the phone. Let's see if we did that. Send device. Oh, wow, it's not even detecting. Okay. Okay, it doesn't even, for some reason, detect my phone right now. That's okay. Yeah, it's given up. Sorry, I can't even get it to detect my phone. I really need to restart. And here's a really good time to remind everyone to save. If you haven't already saved your project, make sure that you're saving incrementally as you're going along, because it is quite brave that I would do all this work and not save, right? Because there's nothing worse than moving along and getting all this work done and then suddenly you've lost it for whatever reason, if it does lock up. So I would suggest that you rename it, save it to your computer, and I'll probably have to restart. I think at this point, I feel like because I'm not able to test it, unfortunately, for you in real time, what you'd want to do is test it on your device. If you're pleased with it, then what you'd want to do is export it. And that's a pretty simple thing. You're going to publish. If you go to File and then hit Publish, and it's going to prompt you with these different elements that you would need to fill in. Am I still sharing my screen? I hope I am, right? Oh, I'm not. This whole time I'm talking through. I'm showing you all the way through, and then we aren't even seeing it anywhere. Okay, well, here we go. Is it showing now? Okay, so that's just showing the publish your effect part of it, right? You can see that. We're not going to actually go ahead and do it, but these are the elements that you would fill out once you've gone to publish, and you're going to publish your effect, or you would update an existing one. What you want to do is record a demo video. You can do that either through Instagram when you push Instagram, or through your phone if you're doing the SparkAR player. And you check here to see it. Does it meet your requirements? Yes, it's got a green check, so that should be fine. You can view your file sizes here, and you want to be less than 4 megabytes for Instagram. Facebook is a little bit larger with 10 megabytes. And then does it meet all the requirements? Yes, so you manage your capabilities here as well. And then what you would do is upload it and then manage it within what's called the SparkAR Hub. And that's where you see where your effects are either being updated or they're just active. You can deactivate them there as well. And you can update accordingly. So let's say you create something like this and you wanted to, just make some changes to it, then you can absolutely go in, rather than publish a new effect, you would create and update an existing effect. So we're not going to do that now because that account is not hooked up, and that's completely okay. You can actually go through those steps. There are a lot of help resources on the Spark AR website if you needed to access those when you're going through the upload process. So let's figure out what else we can do here. I'm trying to have a look at any other questions we might have. Tomas, do you think there's anything that we can do right now that will help? Because I haven't been following the chat. I'm not totally certain if there's anything more, if people would like more, if there was other questions, maybe we can open it up to Q&A right now, because I don't think we paused kind of halfway. That may have been more helpful for me to kind of see where everyone was at. What do we all think about that? Should we go into a Q&A right now while we've got a few people still? Okay. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to have a quick look at those. So these are kind of more general questions, and I guess that's fine if we're just going to answer general questions about AR and wearables. I'm seeing, and there's not really anything that's quite technical. Okay, a lot of questions about if this is going to work in Unity 3D. Interesting. So does it work on Unity 3D? So this is built in Spark AR. And currently, I don't think it's transferable, not that I've seen or heard. And we're just going to leave it at that. So yeah, Spark AR definitely is something that you publish for Instagram and for Facebook at the moment. And like I said, the Facebook family of products is where you'd be publishing to. I'm going to have another look at some of these Q&As and just see if there's anything technical. And if anyone did see any kind of more technical questions about the workshop, certainly let me know. A lot of AR filters. Sure. If you have other questions, if you're building, or if anyone wants to share, if anyone's made any progress at all with theirs and want to share their screen, certainly go ahead. Or if you had questions and want to share your screen and we can help you troubleshoot, this is a really great opportunity to do that now, if that's something that you want to take advantage of. So certainly feel free to mention in the chat or the Q&A if there's anything that you want to share with us. There we go. You see anything, Tomas?
Hey everybody, me back again. I'm Tomas Pietravallo. I'm an AR developer from Argentina with almost 2 years of experience in Spark AR, and I'm somewhat active in the community. So I'm seeing this question from Gabrielle about the difference between uploading directly from Spark AR and exporting and then publishing from the hub, if I understand correctly. So there are many differences. When you publish directly from Spark AR Studio, you'll still be taken to the hub. But when you export and try to publish directly from Spark AR Studio, you do have some other information that you may not have in the hub and that you can find useful when optimizing or trying to manage your capabilities. So when Liane showed you earlier the publishing step, you were able to see detailed reports about the sizes of your different effects and the different target platforms and your capabilities. I hope that answers your question. And if anybody else has any other questions, please drop them in the Q&A or in the chat.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Thank you. So I think at this point, we've only just got a few minutes left, and again, being mindful of everyone's time. What I'm going to do is actually publish this to, I suppose, my Instagram handle, and you can go in and kind of see what the end result is, as well as the original graphic that inspired this piece. And just to kind of recap again what we covered in this workshop. So The idea is, again, to address building something for World AR, because previously what we were building, or what we've seen so much of, are the face filters, which are incredibly captivating. There's so many opportunities for that. But as we are kind of expanding our I guess, our portfolios, and as people are kind of looking to see, okay, well, what else can I do with AR? And we look to this capability, which is wonderful. It's already built in there. The templates, as there are so many other templates as well that are available when you start Spark Studio up, that this is a really great opportunity to kind of take what's already there and just replace it with whatever it is that you want to. I was able to show you, hopefully, how you can bring your 2D assets into a 3D plane. And that's something that you can add to the World AR space, along with all of those wonderful selection of items that you can find within the Sketchfab / Spark AR library that you can bring in, and so many for free if you wanted. There are some that for a nominal fee you can pay. And also, while you're doing that, kind of being mindful of file size, because that is something that will affect the performance of the effects as you're building them out. And then once you're in the space, and once you're in that World AR space, you can kind of really customize it and personalize it. Like I said, by swapping out the assets, by trying to find different ways to add interactivity, such as tapping or animation. Another layer that you can add to this would be a whole, if you were to add music, if you were to do spot audio, so when you have an interactivity, or when you have a tap to touch, that there's a little musical highlight that would be integrated into the scene. So little things like that. If you were also to kind of transport the user by adding just an overall color gradient to the whole scene, that's another way that you can add a mood or level up this effect. There are so many places that you can take this, but because we have the foundational element of the template to begin with, and now just hopefully a few ways that you can bring assets in, now you have a bit more knowledge and hopefully confidence to be able to build your own and build more experiences within the World AR space. So I think, we're pretty much at time. I think, Tomas, thank you very much for hanging out in the chat and fielding questions, and to the Dribble team. And wow, there were some very interesting technical challenges today, and I am incredibly grateful for those of you who stuck it out and were super patient as we're swapping screens and trying to sort these things. It's tech, yep. Peace and love, and very, very much appreciate patience. I am always open by DM. Certainly on Instagram, my handle is at Leanne Toki. Feel free to ask questions there, but not only like we talked about in the fireside chat, not only there, definitely please join the community, join the conversation. There's so much to be offered by all the creators in this space that are so willing to give back, because again, it's a new industry. We all started off really not knowing anything. We are writing the book literally as we're going along, and the willingness to help one another is what's helping to kind of progress this whole industry, and to learn from one another. And like this, Tomas comes in and he's able to join, offer his 2 cents, and same with Isabel, who joined us earlier, and share her knowledge and experience of working within Spark. And so yeah, a big thank you. If there's any other place that we can follow up, certainly maybe if we can just, I guess the links are there, and you've probably all been aware of where we can follow up, and if there are recordings, etc. Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Thanks again for your time, everyone.
Thank you so much, Leanne. That was so inspiring, so creative, so fun and interactive. A really incredible workshop. Thank you also to Thomas for being that voice of knowledge in the chat, helping everyone, and also in the lounge. Thank you so much, Thomas. And then also thank you to Isabel, who was here for our fireside discussion. You guys are real experts in the community, and really appreciate all that you've done for the space. Again, this session has been recorded. If you need to go back and refresh or look at anything, it's going to be on the Dribble YouTube, so you could go and find the recording there. We also would love you to fill in our post-event survey. We would love to hear your thoughts, what we could do differently, what other workshops you want to hear from us. So we put a link in the chat here. Renee's put the link in the chat. We've also sent you an email with the post-event survey, so we would love to hear your thoughts if you could fill that out for us. Again, I know there was a lot of questions that we didn't get around to answering, but please join the Facebook community for Spark AR. I know they're super, like everyone's super active in it. And if you're a beginner, it's a great place to start and ask those questions. So I think that's it from now. In the email that was just sent, it's not only got the post-event survey, but also got the effects that we were using, and then also the Spark AR Studio, a link to that, and then the assets. And finally, it will be so awesome to see your published effects. So please do publish them on your Instagram, on your Facebook. We can't wait to see them and see everything that you've learned. Thank you so much for coming, and hope to see you at another Dribble event.